I met this crazy SOB at the fourth grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the fourth grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the fourth grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. So, at the base and the heart of midlife crisis, not gonna lie, it's Mikey G and Maddie Mintz. And why it is because over 30 years ago, I met this crazy SOB at the 4th grade bus stop. I swear to you, when I first laid eyes on this dude, he was perpendicular to the ground, or not perpendicular, like horizontal to the ground, hanging at a 90-degree off a stop sign. And I was like, what the hell did I just get myself into? And since that, we had a budding, flourishing relationship, been best friends our whole lives. Obviously, life got in the way. You go to college, you get married, you start businesses, things happen. Fittingly enough, our midlife crisis brought us back together, hence the name. We're older than most people in this space, but we found NFTs about a year ago, and then we said, you know what, we're really gonna create a company. As we get more connected, as we go into the metaverse, what we're about to do is meeting new people, having real raw conversations. We think it's gonna become a lost art. So we're here to make that happen, to bring it all to you, and to help you expand, learn, and grow. And we came up with a very simple mission statement. That mission statement is to bring back the lost art of genuine human connection. And I got one last thing to say, and I'm dead serious when I say this. I genuinely, and Maddie genuinely believes we were put on earth to do exactly what we're doing now. We love doing this. We love meeting new people, and it just gets us so freaking excited. We think you as family, and we love you all. What up, folks? Welcome to the Midlife Crisis Show. We are excited. We're going to have an awesome conversation tonight. We are talking to Alpha Traders Country Club and the two beautiful founders that you see before us. But before we get that show on the road, Maddie, how you doing, my man?
Beautiful day, man. Loving Florida, you know it. Every day is just a fantastic day. I'm on the beach. My feet are sandy, so it's definitely a win. Definitely a productive day. Getting ready to head back to the Tampa area here though shortly. So got that stuff going on. But what about you, man? How's your day going on? But what about?
I am absolutely crushing it. It was my Christmas Eve, or not my Christmas. Yesterday was my Christmas Eve. It is my Christmas today because it was the first round of the Masters. And I get really, really excited to watch the Masters, my friend.
You do. I always forget about that.
Unfortunately, Tiger Woods shit the bed, but it's okay because there's a star-studded leaderboard, and it's going to be a fun next 3 more days. So, yeah, man, I'm super jazzed. And it's finally, dude, it has been raining and 55 degrees in San Diego for months. That doesn't happen. It's like once in 2 decades. But it's finally been the last 2 days, 70 degrees and sunny. And it's like, what the hell, man? It's been a wild time here. But other than that, man, I'm just pumped to have our Thursday stream. Can you check the audio on the stream, Maddie? Just want to make sure it sounded real nice. Now that we're talking, I mean, I know the intro video was sounding good.
Yeah, I hear you. You guys are gonna hear an echo. Sorry. Yeah, man, we're good.
All right, awesome.
We're good.
All right, cool, brother. So take it away. Let's introduce our esteemed guest, and we are gonna have a blast, brother.
All right. So this is cool, guys. So listen, as I always say, I love getting a chance to just get some tidbits, a little bit of resume information from each guest before we introduce them to you guys. And each time, you never know, Mikey and I always laugh because we say the same things every time, and people are always very humble about it. I don't know what I'm going to say. I don't know if there's anything important. And it always, we're able to pull a little bit more out. And right before we go live, These two fine gentlemen hit us with some links with a digital, beautiful resume slideshow of these incredible accomplishments that I'm actually going through right now. And I'm like, this is insane. It's wild. So let me tell you about who we're talking to. So Martin and Tyler are the co-founders of Alpha Traders Country Club. Now that's the part you know. Here's the part you don't know. Okay. We're going to start with Martin. First of all, Martin lived in China for 10 years. That in itself, you were talking about like a little bit of an immersion, fluent in Mandarin, met his wife there. But here's where things get a little bit wild. This guy goes on the equivalent of American Idol, but in China. No idea what it's called. We're going to call it Chinese Idol. Okay. He goes in there,
quite a nice one.
right? And here's what's wild. You can imagine he was a little bit of an outsider. Well, this guy gets further up than anybody else has ever done in this show and becomes a little bit of like a phenom celebrity in China. So he then spends the next couple years traveling all around China, basically doing gigs when it comes to music, entertainment. You were in a movie, so you got to do all of these amazing things in the entertainment world. While he's doing that, though, he gets married and decides, you know what I need to do? I need some business experience. Starts and is the CEO of a tea business, like, drinking hot tea. And hold on here. I got to go to the slide because I was looking at this and, bro, you understated this. I'm just going to say it. He's the CEO of Pabst Tea, and I'm looking at this. You know what it looks like? It looks like one of those like posh New York City lounges that you would go in,
It
where the
does, man.
walls are all white and everything's very like well lit, very clean. This is the kind of place where you feel like if you spilled your tea, you could just like use a straw and suck it up, and it wouldn't be a problem. Um,
Absolutely.
it's a fantastic business. So he runs this, does an amazing job, right? He's running it all the way through when the pandemic hits. Of course, the pandemic changed retail for everybody, manages to navigate that and still keeps the business going, but online, and has over 400 locations in China where his tea is being sold. That is amazing right there. Makes the transition while he's doing that, like a lot of people, enjoys day trading and just the market, gets involved with that, is successfully trading for 3+ years, and that's where he meets Tyler. Okay. And so I'm going to bridge over to Tyler here, but I have a fun fact for you. Martin, oh, no, no, no. I already did it. I already did the fun fact. This dude was a superstar in China. I mean,
Not
what am
fun
I?
enough.
I'm going to, yeah, how was going to up
That's a
that? That's
pretty
insane.
that's a pretty
You
fun
nailed it.
fact. Martin, can we
Yeah.
find the link to this crazy music video? Can we see that somewhere
Oh
online?
my gosh. That's
Yeah,
wild. We'll get
you guys
that.
are
We'll,
gonna
we'll get
laugh
there.
at it. Should I
Oh,
just
dude.
where should I post this in our group chat?
Post that
But,
in
but
chat online. Throw it up on YouTube or Twitter,
you guys
wherever
gotta
you
check
are.
this out,
I'll
man.
find
This is
something,
wild.
guys. If you
This
don't
dude
do it,
sang
let
playing
me
the
know.
guitar, and he sang in Mandarin. I just can't even picture that to be so good. Like, people throw that out there. Oh, I'm fluent in Spanish. I'm fluent in something. First of all, being fluent in Mandarin is very difficult, right? But not only being able to speak it and understand it, but to sing and like entertain in a language, that's no joke. You know what I mean? I can't even do that in English. So, yeah, that's very, very impressive, man, and very, very cool. So then, so that's Martin. Then we got Tyler. Tyler is in the construction business from Australia. I love this, from Australia to Austin. So kind of like a little balance there. But in the construction business, civil construction, did that for 8+ years. He has been all over the world doing this. So this guy is an international traveler, over 37 different countries, known as basically called himself a digital nomad. I definitely think there's something to that. And here's again, this is another one of those things. People like to say things like that, but there's a little bit of hyperbole involved. This is not hyperbole, y'all. He started listing some of these countries. He's literally been everywhere. This guy's been all over the planet. I mean, Japan, Turkey. Like, he finally is in the U.S. He's been in the U.S. for a year and a half. It's the longest time he's been in one place in one time. How wild is that? So He's seen it all. He's experienced it all. We're going to have some amazing conversations about all of the things, by the way, I mentioned with both of these fine gentlemen. But a world traveler. And while he was doing that, he's always been interested in trading. So he made the transition into full-time trading from construction, which, by the way, smart decision, because construction is awesome, but man, the longevity in it is just tough. You got to do something that you can do sitting down, man, relaxing. That's what you got. That's smart, especially if you're going to be all over the world. So makes the transition to full-time trading, and these two guys meet up and say, "Wait a second, we got some plans here. Let's take over the world." Boom, Alpha Traders Club comes in, and we're going to get into that too. However, fun fact, when asked, said, "Okay, give me something interesting. Give me something a little bit different." First thing he mentioned, I thought, and this is funny because this is again what happens. People like to downplay things. In his mind, the most random fact was, well, I met my girlfriend online, and the first time we interacted, I asked her at 4 a.m. in the morning to go on a jog, like to go on a run. And apparently this, like, everybody hears this, so like, that is a really random, that's kind of random. And I'm not gonna lie, hearing that's kind of random. That's I do kind of what I'm, I think, more curious about is that I mean, it's your current girlfriend, so she accepted.
Oh my God,
Which
sign me
is
up.
like, man, which means this guy, when he sells, he's got a powerful pitch, man. If you can get somebody to go on a jog at
Absolutely.
4 a.m.,
I never thought about it
dude,
like that.
I know, man. You know how to close, so that's really good. But then, so we're asked, like, what's an interesting thing? He tells me this thing about going on a jog with his girlfriend at 4 a.m. And then he's like, well, and if it matters, I also hang off of helicopters and skydive. Oh,
And
okay. Well,
and he
that's
sent a
just a
picture of
small
him
fact.
doing it, which is a pretty wild
Doing
picture.
This guy's got over 100 plus jumps. There's people who skydive and there's people who skydive. This guy's the latter. So, um, amazing people, interesting gentlemen. I'm already excited. We're going to jump right into it and get into it. Mikey, take us away.
Matt, you crushed that intro, dog. I mean, you went hard and it was real nice. Good job, buddy.
And they made it easy. I mean, it was a softball.
I mean, I'm really impressed. I won't lie. That is just some serious MC skills.
I posted a couple links in our DM for you guys.
Okay, cool.
Nice. All right,
Thanks, man. We'll put those in chat. And so, yeah, man, we're going to start with you, Martin. Like I said from the top, famous midlife crisis question. How'd you get the seat you're sitting in today? Please give us Star Wars episode 1, 2, and 3. 1 is your childhood growing up era. 2 is your professional career and those awesome tea shops that you built. And then 3 is your Web3 journey. Let's start with episode 1. And then once you're done, we'll go to Tyler, man. Can't wait to hear it.
Okay. How detailed should I be getting here?
We'll let you go with it, but Matt and I are not shy about grading how well you did. So let's just go with what you naturally vibe with, and we'll give you feedback. Don't worry.
Well, that's not very encouraging. That's a great start. I'm a plural. I was born in Texas. Early childhood. I was actually adopted when I was 2.5. By my dad, and moved to Colorado when I was around 8 with my parents. And I grew up in the mountains. I was like very, typical, like middle class, like white family, like in the mountains of Colorado. So I had very little worries, and we were always like hiking, camping, skiing, and but I got a good dose of like international culture at the same time, because my dad was from Italy, so we'd go to Italy for the summers, and we'd also have au pairs. So we'd had like people that would live with us from other countries. So like we had a Russian, Ukrainian. They were friends at the time, and a few other countries as well. So I got a good mix of kind of like wanting to travel, and that's kind of where the juices of me wanting to go to China and go travel abroad kind of came about. But yeah, I mean, I can't think of any particularly outstanding. Just my parents got divorced when I was 14. So that was kind of hard on the family. But it allowed me to have a lot of independence early on. So I was already kind of doing my own thing by 17, 18 years old, and ended up going to college in New York State, thinking that that would be a really cool experience going to a different out of state. Realized after a couple years I did not like New York. Not my vibe. Definitely more of a West Coast kind of guy, or Hawaii, or
Okay.
whatever. Like definitely a little more laid back and chill. Feel Northeast is very cliquey. Sorry for anybody that's in the Northeast.
Was born there. I can agree with that.
Yeah. Which isn't bad, I guess, if you're in like a great clique, but like if you're the outsider,
Yeah, for sure.
can kind of suck. So yeah, is that a good dose of early childhood, or was it going deeper than
Oh,
that?
Maddie.
Okay.
I'll let you go, Matt. Although
Right,
you
I
said
want to pop in here as well. If you guys have some feedback, let me jump in. I want to jump on that bandwagon as well.
Well, we got
you're not.
plenty to.
Well, you don't have even a chance yet. So yeah, we'll
Yeah,
get to
exactly.
you. We'll give you
We'll
some
get to you.
feedback.
Don't you worry.
Yeah,
Don't you worry.
listen. Go ahead, Maddie. I'll let you go. He did say a couple interesting things, as in the adoption
For
and the
sure.
Italian pair situation, but I'll let you go.
Oh yeah. Oh, we'll get into it. But just got to think of it this way: when we say episode 1, listen, we already know you're Darth Vader, man, but we need to hear the origin story. Do you see what I'm saying? And if you've ever gone through episode 1 already knowing, like, you want to hurry up and get to the good stuff, but there's just certain foundations that need to be placed. Do you know what I mean? And
Mhm.
so we're gonna get there, man. But you gave us like the teaser trailer to episode 1,
It was
which
very
and
vanilla. Yeah.
that's okay though, because the teaser trailer was great, right? A little Darth Maul. What are you talking about? Lightsabers can have both ends. That was enough to get the juices flowing. We'll get into it. Don't you worry. Um, let's start with this. Adopted. Um, anything was that just because were you already in the foster system, or and I say this, I was adopted myself as a kid. I from the foster system and have amazing parents. But anything there that like was that something that was always what are your thoughts there? How's that? Is that something that's affected you or just kind of neutral?
Yeah. Well, the I'm not. I need to come clean so there's no misunderstanding. I still lived with my uh, maternal mom.
Okay.
So biological mom still living with, and so when I say adopted, I mean legally took my dad's name,
Got it.
who
Got it.
she got married to when I was 2.5, and he became my legal representative.
Got it.
So even like for example, my parent and I called him dad. I grew up thinking of him as dad, and when my parents got divorced, I still stayed with my dad. He was
Got it. Got
so
it.
even though there's no bloodline there,
Sure,
he's
sure.
always been my dad. So that's when I say when I was adopted.
Perfect.
But what do I think
Makes
about it?
total sense.
When you're a kid, you're not aware of the social consequences of adoption. You're not thinking about like, oh man, I must be missing out on something because I'm just living the life of what's in front of me.
Sure. That's all we
And
can do.
and so it didn't bother me at all. I think if anything, it only started to bother me as I got older, and you start to have people talk to you about it, and you're like, huh, like maybe my relationship with my dad is actually different, than say a
Mm,
biological father.
Hmm.
And then my biological father, which I rarely uh, meet, but I have met,
mhm.
um, that at an older age, like especially in the last few years, actually, it's kind of like hit me a little bit harder, not knowing what to call him. Like, do you call him dad?
Yeah. Yeah.
When I meet him, I call him Ken, which is
Yeah.
his name.
Yeah.
And but it's kind of weird because I'm in a room full of people watching us interact, and I've got these half brothers that I didn't even grow up with. So I have 3 older half brothers, and that technically means that my younger brothers are 2 half brothers as well.
Right.
So I'm the one of a kind, and
Yeah.
and uh, and so people are calling them like, oh, it's so great to have you connect again with us in the family, and like it's great to see you hang out with dad. And I'm like, yeah, I'm not gonna be able to call him that.
Mhm.
It doesn't feel right. Um, But then at the same time, when you're now that I've got that in my head and I'm thinking about my Italian dad, I start to question my relationship with him as we get older, where he has his biological sons, my little brothers. And it feels like there's a bit of a stronger connection there, which is natural. So the question that I'm asking myself, this is the hard question. Am I naturally not as close to my dad because I'm not his biological son, or is it because I'm 37 and I've got kids and a family and we're doing our thing? And it
Ooh.
makes sense that, he's going to be closer with my little brothers who are still, like, one's going through law school now. So there's an element of wondering, and going through a divorce plants a lot of these seeds of doubt, because my mom
Sure.
will say, "Oh, we fought all the time because he wasn't
Yeah.
doing the things he needed to do for you. I was, for me,
Mm.
always standing up for you."
Yeah.
And so
No,
it got dirty
that's
fast with the
sure,
parental fighting.
Oh,
sure.
it does. My parents
Yeah.
got divorced when I was little too, and it collapsed my brain
Yeah.
right before 40. So I feel
Well,
you, brother.
and let me tell you why I'm asking, because my goal is not to just like unravel all of these, like, traumatic things. That's not the goal. What I think is interesting though is that these are the kind of things that shape who we are and our motivations. You know what I mean? And so, like, I'll speak personally. Um, I know that for whatever reason, I'm with you. You just grow up who you are. I never thought of it as any different. I didn't know any different. I just grew up. I was adopted. But as you get older, you start trying to, like, process that. It is
Mhm.
interesting that I've met a lot of people who are adopted who work very hard to excel for, like, this sense of almost, and I don't want to say acceptance, but just like to almost like justification. Do you know what I mean? And it's just interesting because it's a draw, it's a motivating factor. You see a lot of people who excel at very high levels who were adopted, and even on an unconscious level, it's like, who are we doing this for? You know what I mean? Are we doing it for ourselves, or who are we doing it for? And I just think it's very interesting because it shapes us, right? It shapes who us are, just like divorce can, just like, there's a lot of different things that can happen to us. We've had some incredible guests on the show. We had a gentleman who had gone through a crazy experience as a kid with a mother who, uh, and a father that got into drugs, and how that went with everything. You remember that, Mikey, and how that was a wild ride, man. But it shapes who we are. Do you think do you consider, I mean, you're obviously very driven. You're willing to do things and go where it takes. Do you think that some of those factors came from that, or do you think maybe other influences were maybe more in play?
Yeah, I mean, you're asking a very deep question that maybe I haven't really thought or processed through. So,
Mm.
getting into therapy, therapy zone here. Yeah, I can't see how it wouldn't affect me. I'm trying to think how that connects to my drive. Where's my drive come from? I've always been considered a person that has a lot of perseverance, and
Mm.
I don't know if that's coming from a need for acceptance or what, but I've definitely always wanted acceptance from my dad, my Italian dad,
Yeah,
and there's always a level of the need to um, almost get his acceptance more than my mom in some ways,
sure. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
which is interesting considering my mom's my biological mom that loves me unconditionally no matter what, and yet I'm less concerned about her and more concerned about impressing my father. Um,
Mm.
this is what I asked though. Is that isn't doesn't most kids go through that anyway?
Yeah.
I think
Oh,
I think you're right. I
So
absolutely.
think you're right. Yeah.
100%.
so
L-
I have a hard time knowing how much the non-biological component plays in that. Um,
Well, let me ask you something fun, man. So, dude, Italian dad, was he from Italy? Like, grew up in Italy?
yeah, he's living back in Italy now. He's in
Dude.
Florence.
So tell me, what was your favorite food growing up, man? Because Italians can
I
make some pretty
My
killer food.
13th birthday, I had a cake full of the pastries, the millefoglie. You ever heard of
Mm,
millefoglie?
I've
No.
only heard of it. Haven't
Kind of
had
they're
it
kind
yet.
of like Napoleon pastries.
Yeah.
They've got all the micro layers, and then with the powdered sugar on top, with
That
the creams stacked in between the layers. That is amazing. Like the best dessert I can think of in my head.
Yeah.
So that will never
Love it.
forget. I'll never forget eating millefeuille
Nice.
in Italy. But
So to kind of
Hey,
expand
we talk
on.
about food. We can talk about China. There's a lot of crazy food I've had in China.
Oh, I'm
Asian.
Oh, we'll get there.
sure.
I can't wait to talk about China.
But
I ate some
to
dog. That
to
was good.
expand on the childhood stuff more just like the influences, right? So like you said you were um outdoors a lot, right? Did you play any sports in school? Like what were kind of the things that you were passionate about? Because there was this sense of entrepreneurship that came further down in your life. So did you remember any moments when you were younger that kind of start fostering that curiosity? You mentioned, you had multiple pairs in the house, so that makes sense for the travel. Anything else to expand upon there, whether it be what you
Yeah,
did as a
well-
kid or what you'd like to do in school or extracurricular stuff?
Well, I'm like I'm victim of that parenting demographic that the mother told you that you were very special and could do anything you wanted.
Yes.
And so I grew up. My mom's a clinical psychologist too.
Oh,
So
okay.
she was
There
doing all
we
her
go.
therapy on me when I was little, and so I got this like probably a overdose of like self confidence. Always like telling me I could do anything. So I always was dreaming, as irrational as it may have been, thinking that I was going to be able to do a lot of stuff. So I say that tongue in cheek because it did actually help a lot having that like extra confidence.
Yeah.
And I think there the sad thing is that that's not enough alone. So you need to have that confidence, but then you also need to have skill sets. You also need to be, intelligent. And I think the problem that we get with the millennial demographic sometimes is that we're pushed that way, and yet probably only half of us could cut it. It's
Smart.
that's where you,
Yes.
that's where you get the
Yep.
people singing on stage in American Idol that don't realize they're no good. So they think they're awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like misperceptions of reality.
Right.
So I had a good dose of like, I was smart enough to realize like what the things I was good at and what I wasn't.
Right.
So I had a pretty accurate self deprecating ego
Mhm.
that I could be boosted up in confidence, but then I'd also have part of me that's like, no, you suck at that, Martin. Like,
Right.
that was all.
Yeah, it's
And so
pure
I always had-
self-awareness, right? Gary Vee talks about it a
always
lot.
had the self-critique, yeah. And in high school, I mean, if anything, it's like it's middle school, high school, we're all very insecure. So I had a
Yeah.
lot of that self-criticism, which kind of kept me in check. But I dared to do a lot of things. So I was active in a lot of different activities, trying a bunch of different stuff.
Right.
Most of my friends from high school stayed in state, go to CU Boulder or something. It's all very convenient. I was like, no, like I'm going to New York, man. I'm doing something different. And I started a coffee business with a couple classmates. This was our first entrepreneurial endeavor. And we went and made a business plan. And I dropped out of college for a semester to do this, my junior year. And we were going to
Didn't know
bring
about
fair
this.
trade coffee beans to colleges was the plan. Because at the time there was all this like fair trade like petitioning that universities were doing.
Yeah.
So we wanted to jump on this opportunity because we were like really into the idea of fair trade at the time, and I was just entrepreneurial. I just wanted to do stuff and create things, and so I dropped out of school for a semester to do that, and we raised about 1.25 million US dollars.
What?
Dang.
And that was 21 when we did that. And so that was really my first real experience as an entrepreneur. And we lived in this like little, we called it the Manor, but it was like a drug like infested like little like shack like in downtown Colorado Springs. and we were sleeping on like mattresses and the floors and everything, like really living the dream,
Right.
of a startup,
Yeah.
Um, and I ended up leaving and going back to school because I got into a dispute about shares in the company, and I basically had two other partners that squeezed me out, not completely, but like I didn't think it was fair the amount of share that I was getting. Um, Go into details. They gave me 8%, and I thought I should have gotten at least 33 if we were going to be splitting it
Sure.
evenly amongst
Yeah.
the three of us. But in their heads, it was their idea, which is true. They brought me on and said, "Hey, we got this idea. Like, come and join us."
Yeah.
But at the same time, I didn't want to be treated like I
Yeah.
wasn't an equal founder. Like, I'm all
For
in this
sure.
just as much as you guys are.
Yeah.
So I ended up saying, you know what, you guys do this. I'm going to go back and finish school. I'm going to get my degree. All the power to you guys. I hope it goes well. And that company ended up shutting down. I think after 4 or 5 years, didn't go anywhere. Not to say that I would have been any different if I was there, but it's just the nature of startups. But that was that drive was built in early on. So I had already in college like been thinking, I want to start businesses. And so here's a good point that can lead me to how I came to China. Is I also liked to read books. Not a huge reader, don't get me wrong. I'm not like, fucking Elon Musk, like memorizing chapters of astrophysics. But there was a really good book by Malcolm Gladwell called Outliers.
Yep.
You guys ever heard of this book?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it.
Maddie's reading it at the moment.
Yeah,
My girlfriend.
Nice.
and one of the things that I'm reading this in 2008, so
Right.
I'm finishing my school, finishing my last year of college, and we're like just diving into this economic like crisis, like shit's hitting the fan, at this time. And I'm reading this book that says there's a lot of people read this book and get different things out of it. What I got out of this book was basically that your environment dictates 90% of your success.
Mm-hmm.
So you might think that all these self-help books about like what you got to do to like make it and come from nothing and all that, that's true, but that's really only 10%. The other 90% is what year you were born, where you were born, with what resources were you born. And he gave out a bunch of examples about how the environment basically affects everything. So there's no coincidence, for example, that all the big billionaires in tech came from Silicon Valley, So,
Yeah.
and it's no coincidence that if you want to be a big pop singer, like you're not going to do it in Ohio. Like you need to be in LA, New York City. So,
Yeah.
I mean, it's simple concepts, but he just really drive this point home is that, the professional hockey player was a great example where he showed statistics of, I don't know if it's accurate anymore, but at the time, if you wanted to be a professional hockey player in the Canadian League, you were almost not 100%, of course, but very unlikely if you were born in the months of December. And then as you went all the way up to January, you became more and more likely. So the most amount of professional players in the hockey league in Canada was born in January, February, March. And people are like, why is that? Like, wouldn't it just be all based on individual ability? And the idea is that because it's such a competitive sport up there, people start really young. So people are on skates 3 years, 4 years old. And they're doing these leagues where it's like 3 and under, 4 and under, 5 and under. So you can imagine what happens when you're in a 4-year-old league and you're playing against a 4-year-old who's 11 months older than another 4-year-old.
Right.
Yeah.
And at that age, that 11 months of development for a 4-year-old can be massive. And especially with something with hockey where it's all about physicality and like height and age. I mean, all of that really matters, that developmental period. And so all of these runts were getting basically sent down to like the JV level. Like, okay, yeah, good job. You guys go do the recreational hockey. And then all the ones that are doing really well, we're going to give you the best coaches, the best training, the best ice times. And so by the time they're actually 14, 15 years old, they are the best. Does it make sense?
Wild.
Oh yeah,
No,
absolutely.
love it.
And
Love
so,
it.
so then there was this other statistic, and I'm sorry, this is long-winded, but I feel like this is,
No,
if
this
there's
is
ever
great.
a long-winded point to make,
Yeah.
these are the podcast to do it on.
Yeah.
There was another statistic where he measured the amount of wealth that a group of people generated based on when they were born. So if you were born in the United States between 1900 to 1905, that was one group. And then you took another group of born from 1905 to 1910. So just a 5-year difference. And you saw how their state of living and income was. There was a significant difference between the two because one of those age groups graduated out of high school right into an economic recession, the Great Depression in 1929.
Right.
And that, just that depression and right at that age where you're supposed to enter the workforce and there's nothing.
Yeah.
It had long-term effects for the rest of their lives because not only did it mean that they didn't get to hit the ground running, but it changed their expectations in life. It changed their habits of what they wanted to get out of life. And those long-term effects manifested in wealth creation for these individuals.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
so it's 2008 and the market's crashing. There's jobs aren't looking great. I don't know what I want to do. And I'm about to graduate into this economic recession.
Yeah.
I'm like, fuck. I'm going to be that group. And I'm thinking, well, what do I need to do? I need to put myself in an environment that's growing, where there's going to be economic opportunity. And from what I've been reading and what I had learned as a political science major, like Asia, I need to go to Asia. I need to go to China. Like that country's, the demographics are growing 7, 8, 9% a year. More and more millionaires coming out of that country faster than you can count. And so just from that book, and then that kind of daring, like ready to go do shit. Like I went to China, I actually went to Nepal first to join an NGO for a few months, and I had a backpack and a guitar. I had a case full of clothes as well, but I left it on top of a bus in Nepal that drove off without me when I got off. So I literally went from Kathmandu to this place in China called Jiangxi Nanchang, and it's a totally off the beaten like tourist path. Like no foreigners go there, but I wanted to go there because I wanted to go and learn Chinese, and I knew that if I went to Shanghai or Beijing, there's gonna be a lot of a lot of gringos and a lot of just English speaking, and I was like, no, I want full immersion, and so I'm gonna go to this podunk city of 8 million people, Nanchang, by the way. Like every city there is like massive.
Right. Right.
And there's like 30 of these cities that like nobody knows in the West, and they're all like larger than the 10 largest cities in Europe.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy. And so I go to the city of 8 million people with a backpack and a guitar, and I start going and playing around bars with my guitar, making a few hundred yuan here and there. And then I got a job teaching English. That's how I got my visa to stay there. And then that's when I joined the singing competition. And so when I started singing and doing that competition, I was still learning Chinese. So I was like memorizing lines, not even really knowing what I'm saying, but like I'm gonna get the sounds right. And yeah, so now we're up to my China career.
Dude, that's crazy. That is a fantastic episode 1.
Crushed it.
I think yeah, you nailed it.
Yeah, you guys had to warm me up a little bit.
No, we warmed you up. All right, we got there. Yeah, I think the only other thing is, so I what I heard too was like reading, like that book really kind of changed the face of your life. Was there any other kind of extracurricular activities, or like was it your major that made you jump to that next level of I'm just going to start a business, or you just always had this kind of inherent or feeling inside that you wanted to be a risk taker?
Yeah, it's probably a good word to use, risk taker.
Yeah,
I think you have to have a little bit of it. Man, you I don't know if there's anything in particular.
And that's
part of my
okay. If you
personality.
if you don't
Yeah.
have an answer, that's totally
always-
fine. Just was wondering if there was anything else. I mean, your story about the book was a perfect example of something that heavily impacted your life decisions. Didn't wanted to know. Just make sure we didn't. You have anything else to add to that?
Well, one thing that may be interesting to some people is that there was a lot of drug use and alcohol use in my high school, probably like most high schools.
Mm-hmm.
But especially in my high school, we were renowned for drugs and alcohol because we were from like the slightly wealthier part of the town.
Yeah.
So we had money to spend, and I know that I have a lot of classmates from high school that I was friends with and in the same crew with, and somehow they veered off the wrong path. So I had good friends that now are in jail or died from overdose.
Wow.
And my little brother included, who's now a doctor, by the way, in San Diego at Scripps.
Wow.
He was addicted to black tar heroin for a little bit in high school.
Good Lord.
Passing out in the bathroom of high school, like from having too much Xanax, like crazy shit, and very serious stuff. And yet somehow I like wiggled my way out of that and like didn't become a total fuck up. Like I don't know, it's there's such a fine line of
Right.
like
Yeah.
trying to be a risk taker, which was what drove me to that crowd of like, I want to go out, I want to do this, I want to,
Mm-hmm.
I want to, but I was never the person to take it that extra step where it's like, oh, I know, let me sit on the hood of a car while we drive drunk.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I know friends like that, and I know people like that, and now they're dead.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's just so weird to think that that high risk behavior that makes you an entrepreneur and then makes you that dare taker to like go out and try stuff, if you're not careful, can also be the same. Tyler, I hope you're listening. Can also be that same thing that kills you. Like I had a rock climber a friend of mine who died in New Mexico solo climbing. He was like 22 at the time when it happened.
Yeah.
So I think, I don't know really where I'm going with this other than the risk-taking component of being an entrepreneur. It's such a nuanced like path that can also lead you down very easily totally destructive paths as well.
Yeah, but you obviously had strong family values as well, and felt safe and comfortable being able to take risks. But you also got a message at some point along the way that, extremes, and maybe that was just an inherent feeling in your body that you just didn't want to ramp up.
There's a little bit of luck in it too.
100%. If people don't say they're not lucky, the way that they ended up, my buddy and I talk about this all the time. There was, we look at some people that we went to high school with, and it's not like I did much different than some other people, and they're still struggling at a sales job, right? And I've had a really successful career, and there's such a fine line. So that's a great point, man. Maddie, what did you got?
No, I think that's very well said, and I also think that it's just I like how you put it there. The high risk behavior really has to be honed and focused into something productive, or it tends to end up somewhere destructive. And I think that that's just the nature of it. It's a personality thing, though. I mean, I get it. You know what I mean? We're constantly trying to push the bounds because we want to see what we can do. You know what I mean? We want to see what's possible, and especially, man, as an entrepreneur, like, I mean, you guys get it. I mean, it's like nobody wants to start a business to see, well, I'm just going to see if I can have one coffee shop and see what happens. It's like, I want to be Starbucks. You know what I mean? Let's go. How do we do that? And I think that there's something to be, when you can pour that energy into that, it at least focuses it into something productive. That's my thought. But I love it, man. That was fantastic. That was great breakdown.
You nailed
sure.
episode 1, brother. You nailed it.
Yes.
So Tyler, now,
No pressure, Tyler.
and then again,
so you've technically just screwed me.
No, but and of course, talk. If anything's uncomfortable or you don't want to talk about it, feel free to say that.
A lot now.
Let's hear it, man. Family, childhood. how you grew up. And again, kind of the questions there at the end is thinking about, as you tell the story, what impacted maybe the way your mindset is today.
For sure. I apologize, by the way. I'm coming off sickness and I've keep coughing and spluttering, so I apologize.
No worries, man.
All
But
good, man.
no, I guess I had an incredible childhood, and an incredible childhood to the point that my childhood is kind of one of the things that impacted me the most in my life, and it impacts me every single day moving forward, which I'll get to sort of towards the end here. But I grew up in a place called Wollongong on the east coast of Australia, and grew up in a great family. I probably same as Martin. I was definitely didn't have any worries as a child. My dad was quite successful in action sports and then into business. My mum in business, and we didn't really have any worries. But my dad was a world champion superbike rider, like MotoGP type stuff, where they're 300 miles an hour, or 300 kilometers an hour around on the road bikes with their knees dragging and their elbows and that kind of stuff. So he traveled the world for close to 10 years, doing that from Spain to Malaysia, Japan, all over. And I was definitely brought up in that type of family. So like I was put on a motocross bike at the age of 2, and started racing motocross from the age of 4. And my childhood was one that I wasn't ever stopped from doing anything, but more so encouraged to do things, to the point of like the whole like fuck around and find out type thing, where my parents like, if you want to jump off this cliff, like find out, like go ahead.
Go for it, bro.
Yeah, and so I guess that's kind of the like my dad was very much like that, and my mum was obviously had become accustomed to that. So that's kind of the nature that I was growing up with. I've got three siblings. I've got an older sister and then 2 younger brothers. But yeah, basically my childhood was spent every weekend. I was traveling somewhere different. Usually traveling 6 to 10 hours away every weekend, going racing, motocross, state championships, national championships, all these types of big events. And then it was one of those things, and I think that this really leads me to where I am today and who I am today. And I think this is why me and Martin get along so well, is like I came from a very, very well-off family, and I never had a problem in the world, but I was at the same time, I was never given anything. So I remember like when I was about 8 years old, I started asking my parents for things. I was like, I want this and I want that. And basically the answer to that was my dad got a little step ladder, a little stool, and he put it behind the front desk in one of his retail stores, which is a motorcycle shop. And he got a little kid's work uniform made up. And he said, well, this is your hourly rate. This is your shifts that you're going to be working. If you want what you want, then this is how many shifts you've got to work. So I'm 8 years old, speaking gibberish, standing on a step stool behind a counter serving customers. And it was something that was always bred into me, that, you can have whatever you want, but you have to get whatever you want. And that was something that really carried through for me throughout my whole life. I worked for everything, and I started working a variety of different jobs when I was about 12, 13 years old. I got a job in a fast food restaurant when I was almost 14 years old. And then this is kind of where my entrepreneurial stuff sort of started. I was going to school, 5 days a week. And then I was also working in this fast food shop 5 nights a week. And this fast food shop was really like upmarket fast food. So people would come in, but it's like really expensive cakes, expensive dinners. Like it's really upmarket. And what they would do at the end of each night, they'd throw away all the food that didn't get sold. So I'd go to work with my school backpack, and I'd fill my school backpack with all of the real expensive cakes and sushi rolls and all these different things. And then I'd go to school the next day with 2 backpacks, one with my school books and one with all my food in it. And then I'd sell all of the food at school, and I'd make $50 per night at work. And then I'd make around $40 to $45 per day at school selling the food from the night before at work. So then by the time I was 16 years old, when everyone started getting their licenses, everyone basically had like hand-me-down cars of like, the 10, 20-year-old Toyotas and things like that. And, I was 16, and we don't get our license there until we're 16 and 9 months. And then on my 16th birthday, I bought a $25,000 sports car by myself at 16 years old. So it was like one of those things where it was like, I've always wanted nice things, and I've always done nice things, but I've always like made it work and made it happen. So it's I've never raised money before or done any like the sort of stuff that Martin was saying, but I've done a lot of like solopreneur stuff,
Sure.
which was awesome. So my parents split when I was 9 years old, which for most people it's like a really hard part of their childhood and something that's really difficult for them, where in a weird way for me it was like one of the best things that ever happened, because my parents split, and it was horrible to start, but my mum lived on the ocean, basically. Like you step out the front door, ocean's right there, beautiful crystal clear waters. And then my dad moved about 25 minutes away on this beautiful 35-acre farm with tractors and dirt bikes and everything. So I basically spent my upbringing going between a great farm and the beach. So it was one of those things where I kind of felt bad about it, where everyone was so distraught about it, and I was like, this is great, are you kidding? Like, got the best of everything. And then and the other thing that it bred in me was that my whole life is outside. So if I'm at my mum's house, I'm at the beach, I'm in the ocean, surfing, I'm using my hands, I'm in nature. And then I go and visit my dad, and it's chopping firewood, and it's on tractors and building dirt jumps, and looking after a farm and animals, and really everything in my life up until really the last 2 to 3 years has been hands-on, nature, mud on your face, down and dirty, which is funny because now it's like, here I am with a microphone. I'd be laughing at you if you said that I had computers and shit around me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It's a funny
Not
one.
only computers, but Web3.
I know, it's hilarious, and it's funny because one of the things, it's like one of the things that people know me for in our community is like, I'm super simple, very simple. So everyone's like, oh, they want to talk about like the real in-depth of like trading and the markets and technical analysis and fundamentals and all these things. And I'm like, no, like market goes up, market goes down. You just look at the probabilities. That's it. Simple. Everyone's like, no, you need to get in depth. I'm like, dude, I started using a computer like 4 years ago. Like, I like to keep things pretty simple. So yeah, that's kind of my life up until around 16.
Yeah, man. That is that was a good episode 1. But Martin definitely taught you the way. So thank you, Martin, for setting the example, and you're able to follow that up. You said a bunch of interesting things. Knowing that you're a digital nomad, my assumption is that comes from what you were saying is this constant travel as a young kid. Any other things there that kind of influenced this? I want to travel the world, live in 30 something countries. Love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's funny you said it directly, very directly what you've just said. When I was growing up, and Australia is a much more appropriate country to be able to do this in. I would probably recommend against it throughout a lot of parts of America that I've experienced. But in Australia, I was always taught that, speak to strangers, go and talk to strangers, go and interact with strangers. Like as a kid, like if we would walk into a store and there's people shopping, like my parents would be like, go and talk to them, go and hang out with them. Like there's people on the side of the street, like go and speak to them, go and hang out with them. And that, strangers hold the world, and you never know who you're speaking to and all these types of things. So, and then obviously going away every weekend, racing and to all these different events and things, my dad every weekend and every day would be like, part of this is going away to become a motocross racer, but a large part of it is trying to expand your network around Australia to be able to have a network everywhere. And it sort of bred into me this concept that anything that you ever want in life, strangers have. And I started listening to TED Talks when I was about 13 or 14 years old. I'd put them on when I'd go to sleep, and have my subconscious mind take in the talks as I was sleeping. And I remember I was always like, you know what, I'm going to do my own TED Talk. That's going to be that's like my goal now in life. I want to do my own TED Talk. And I want to do my TED Talk on how anything and everything that you ever want in life is in other people and in strangers around the world. And I started writing out my talk when I was about 17. I was like, went through different versions of it. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going to be so influential and all these different things. And then I was like, had the realization one day, I was like, who's going to listen to a 17-year-old kid talk about any of this stuff that's only been to a couple of countries and hasn't really got the experience? So I thought, well, I'm gonna live this out, and then I'll come back and I'll be able to do a talk. So turned 18 and basically left on a one-way ticket with the idea that I'm going to see how far around the world I can get, how many crazy places I can visit, and more importantly, how many unbelievable people that I can intertwine into my journey. And my route of travel was purely based on meeting someone and then getting a recommendation for them to meet someone else. So I flew to Canada, and then I had met someone there that was like, oh, I've got a friend in this part of Canada that you should meet. I'd love to connect you. So then I would book a ticket and go and meet this random stranger. And then they'd be like, oh, I've got a friend in the UK that I'd love for you to meet. And they'd link it, and then I'd go to there. And then, I worked all over. I worked in the Rocky Mountains in Canada. I worked for DC Shoe Company in Japan for their professional snowboard and ski team, running a snowcat operation on a private mountain. I was a heli ski guide, just all these crazy things in crazy places with crazy people, just through networking and meeting people and understanding people's stories and everyone having something to offer. And here I am now, holy shit, how many years has it been now? 7, 8 years later. And I realized that I never actually came out of that ever. And I don't think I ever will come out of that. I know this sounds real hippie because I'm not a hippie, but I kind of just feel like the world's my home. It's like I just feel at home as long as there's people around. And that's kind of where we're at. I mean, that's even how me and Martin met.
Dude, amazing story. One thing I want to follow up, and then you can go, Maddie. I think a natural follow-up to that is maybe 2-3 things max, from being this digital nomad, having multiple jobs, meeting multiple people, lessons learned, thoughts top of mind when you look at that, past 7-8 year experience.
Sorry, if I understand the question, what was the most
either transformational or kind of if someone were to listen to this and they were like, hey, I actually really have thought about traveling the world because I know it can be very impactful for me. You are now the sensei, right? You've done that. You've been through this experience. You know, what are some things that you can share about things that you learned, maybe do's, maybe don'ts? I'm be interested to hear that.
Two things. The first is don't demonize people until they ask you to demonize them. I know that sounds extreme, but people, the natural tendency that I find in a lot of people is they want to dislike and/or, I use the word demonize. It sounds terrible. It's just, but it's like they want to not like someone or not trust somebody before they want to trust them. And I think that you want to flip that script at some part in your life, and at least trial it and experiment with it. That, you know, meet someone on the street and run at them with the idea that you fully trust them and that they're an incredible person, even if they're a homeless person or if they're, you know, a police officer or, you know, whatever it might be. But like, go into that interaction and actually like take yourself and actively put yourself into an interaction with them with the idea that they're a really good person. And that will always yield, I say always, 99% of the time will yield a really good result. Whereas talking to people and having to have them jump through hoops to gain your trust and to make you believe that they're a good person is something that will always yield pretty par results.
Yeah.
And I say that as a prerequisite. I think that everything can be trumped and then there is nothing in the world that you have to worry about if you live through enthusiasm. I don't believe that, like, you don't need to gain people's trust if you're an enthusiastic person because people trust you. You don't have to try and switch people's moods from being in a bad mood to being in a good mood if you're enthusiastic because it's contagious. You don't need to worry about getting stuck anywhere if you're enthusiastic. You know, you can be in the middle of, you know, and this is like things that I experience daily. Like, you can be in the middle of Japan where you don't speak any Japanese. There's people everywhere. You don't have a phone, you don't have a car, you're like completely lost. And as long as you're enthusiastic and you want to, like, you're like, wow, like, how exciting, I'm fully lost and I have no idea what's next. As long as you're excited, people want to help and people want to interact. And it naturally draws the best parts of people out. And I think that that's kind of the blanket of winning life, not just for everyone around you, but for you as well, because you embody this positive experience where everyone around you is so happy and so positive and so excited. And you just have to, you know, start that, and then you can't stop it because it's contagious. You give it to someone else, and then once they get excited, you can't stop because now you're feeding off their excitement and goodwill. And, you know, it's, I don't really know where I'm going with it, but
no. It's a great thought and a great mindset to have. You made me smile because you can ask Maddie. I've always had an enthusiastic attitude, and I was the guy that people gravitated towards when we went out drinking and, you know, did all the fun things, right? Because I didn't care how bad of a dancer I was going to try to dance with the best of them. And yeah, that's such great insight, and I love both of those tidbits. Maddie, anything before we move on, because we have really hammered down on episode 1. We got 2 more, so we're going to have to do the highlights of episode 2 so we can get into Web 3.
For sure. Yeah, I do have one question. And by the way, Mike, if you didn't say it, I was going to say it. You just described Mikey G when you said
I know, and I've met Mikey a few times, and I think that's why we gravitate towards each other, though.
Absolutely.
It's fantastic.
It's awesome.
And I think it's cool too because, you know, listen, like, we're naturally enthusiastic about things that we enjoy. You know, if you get that person that might be kind of like sour at work, but then you get them talking about fishing or something like that they really love on the outside of work, you can like see them light up, and you get to see that. And it is cool though. There's something about saying, okay, like lead with that in every situation. And it's really cool to see how doors open up. That's really cool. An amazing story, by the way, about just like the power of networking. My other question, my question is going to be this: 8 years old, on a step stool, greeting customers. What a valuable lesson. And I'm not I can't get into the details in terms of, I think it's important for youth to learn these type of life lessons, right? That you can earn whatever you want, but you're not going to be given, because that's how life is, isn't it? I mean, that prepared you very well for life. I just want to hear this. How beneficial do you still hold on to that? Is that something like you would want to teach your kids in terms of that type of a lesson? What are your thoughts around that? Because I think that that's a massive, massive life lesson that you got early, but that's like honestly a lot of people are missing, and that's a difference maker. What do you think?
I think it was huge. I think it was game changing, to be honest. It made me. What I think what it did for me is, when you sort of mentally come to a little bit, and you mentally mature a little bit, maybe let's say your early 20s, where you're working really hard, and you've got a few friends who are like still living at home and like still, milking off their parents for everything. They don't pay for anything. They still like kind of get everything for themselves, and you become really hyper aware about those people. I kind of had that awareness and was given that awareness from the age of like 9 or 10. Because the age of 8, I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm not super excited to do it, but I was taught that not only did I have to do it to get what I want, but I have to do it and be happy about it and excited about it and get excited about it. And by the age of 9 or 10, I started, and I've gone through this a lot, but I really kind of became a bit of a loner in my life, and I only had a select few friends who held the same qualities. And I became someone where I was like, if anyone's in my life, they need, like, there's standards that need to be met. Whereas, kind of what Martin was saying, when you grow up, it's so easy to go down the wrong path. It's so many points, all the way up until you're probably 30. There's so many easy paths to go down that's negative. And I think that what it did for me was it put standards in place of who was coming into my life very early, where it's like, 10 or 11 years old, it's like, oh, you're still throwing tantrums to get what you want. That's embarrassing. Whereas another 10-year-old would be like, that's normal. Whereas I was like, why aren't you doing, why aren't you putting in the work to get what you want and being a mature person? So I think that was what it was for me, but it also didn't rob me of my childhood. It enhanced my childhood, because the people that were around me, the other kids who were around me, were like super high standard kids.
Jeez.
I
We
guess.
need to cut that clip and just throw it into some American schools, because that's fantastic. But here's what's really cool about it, because like you said, it enhanced your childhood. And on top of that, what's interesting is when it's dependent on you, it forces you to think and problem solve. And so like the question is if you didn't have that, would you have thought to take that food from that fast food restaurant and then sell it at school? Right. That's the kind of thought. It's like, wait a second, I'm going to problem solve here. I see a situation, I see an opportunity, and that doubled your income. You know what I mean? That got you to that $25,000 sports car, and so it's just kind of a cool thought process that even though it was instilled at a young age, it taught you how to, okay, how do I think? How do I solve this problem? There's something I want. I'm responsible for getting there, and I'm going to figure out a way to do that. I think that that's really powerful, man. That's really good. That's cool.
It's probably makes me also think about having your kids do that. Like if I wanted Raymond to do that, I feel like in some ways I'm kind of worried about the future, because one, I don't even think you can have kids work that young in the US.
No.
You can't anywhere in the world.
No.
And two, like with all the automation coming and the AI coming, like it makes you wonder,
Yeah.
like, are there going to even be like opportunities for kids to have those kind of jobs? You know, like
Yeah, but you
It
know what's
worries me.
interesting though? We find and all of us can probably relate, like whether it be shoveling driveways, if you live in a place that snowed, or like mowing lawns or something. I mean,
something.
you find a way, right? And even just a little bit of that. Like I'm not saying necessarily take your 8-year-old and say, here's a broom, go work at McDonald's, but because you're right, you can't do that, but you can like little things are definitely there's something about earning something. I'm not
Right.
going to give this to you. You have to do X, Y, Z and earn it. And then when you earn it, there's a feeling of gratification. That I think is the lesson at the end of the day. Even if it's not necessarily dollars for something you buy, it could be something else. And I mean, I think we can all relate to that. And I think that there's something really healthy about letting somebody go through the stuff that's like, "Ugh, I don't really like doing this," but then getting that prize at the end and suddenly it was validated, because that's life. That's how it
Right.
works, And
Yep.
so I think there's something
Good
to be
point.
said there. But yeah.
Yeah,
Mikey,
there's always
any
ways to do it. Yeah.
Yeah, there's
for
always
sure. I agree.
definitely different ways to do it. I think I want to be cognizant of time.
Yeah, we gotta
Let's go to episode. By the way, you both crushed it. This is why we're here doing what we do. I hope you guys get the sense of the vibe that we're going for now. Really, really fascinating conversations. Really awesome input from both of you. Let's do this though. Let's maybe do a condensed episode 2. Obviously, Martin, you've got a really interesting story in China and building the business. So definitely let's highlight that. But we'll also, again, follow up with, like, I think and what's going to be really interesting to hear from both of your perspectives. And we got a little of it from Tyler is these kind of takeaways and learning lessons and advice that you can help share
yeah.
with our community. So let's do the quick bulleted of episode 2 for you, Martin, and we'll go from there.
Could Yeah, I got a narrative that I can follow that leads to some points too. Even some of the things that Tyler mentioned, which I think could be a very interesting topic that we might have to just highlight. But
Love it.
doing business in China is a vastly different experience than doing business in the United States, and it brings up some interesting cultural differences. But in terms of the chronology of everything, I was doing music for full time for 3 years. I had a record deal. They didn't make me a record, but I did have an agent where they're booking me shows, and I was doing television. I was singing in stadiums of like 50,000 people, like in random places you would never imagine. And it was very common in China. Like for here, it's a big deal. Like we have big concerts, and you have a 50,000 people would be a big concert. That's like Super Bowl, like I think Super Bowl was like 100,000 or something. But in China, that could be par for the course. Like on any given weekend, there's some major concert going on that's being hosted by a real estate development that just built 4 towers in this city, Urumqi, maybe in Inner Mongolia. They have to take a plane to and then drive 2 hours, and then you're in this like massive like real estate development, and they're hosting a big party after the completion of the build, and they'll invite celebrity singers and I was like, I always thought of myself as like the cultural act. Like you ever been like to like a variety show, like a talent show, and then there's like that one like act where like an African tribe comes on and like does like this really interesting like cultural dance.
Right.
That was me. They like slot me in between like 2 really like famous Chinese singers, and then be like, oh, and now the white guy's gonna sing a Chinese song. and but hey, I made good money doing it. I could get, on a good show, I'd get like $3,000-$4,000 to just sing a couple songs.
Yeah.
And, if you could do that every weekend, you'd be doing pretty well.
Yeah.
And that led me eventually to meeting my wife. And as I got married, I kind of had to come to a decision of whether I wanted to pursue music or transition to something that might be a little more sustainable in terms of longevity and stability. And I remember very clearly I was in Taiwan, thinking about, this is before I got married, by the way. I think we were engaged at the time. And there was this record label that was ready to sign another deal with me, and they promised that they were going to help make an album for me, and I was going to be able to tour not just mainland China. They were going to really start letting me go to like Malaysia and Indonesia and Thailand and stuff, because that's where a lot of their connections were in Southeast Asia. And I was really tempted to take it, but it would mean that I probably wouldn't be able to stay in China with my wife, and I knew that me as a person, it's my high risk personality, that was not going to work. I was going to end up living the party life of drinking and cheating. Like, I could just see it. Like,
Yeah.
you send me loose in the Philippines singing music, like there's going to be a lot of stuff involved, and
Oh yeah.
I just knew it wasn't. So I had like a moment where I basically said, I'm going to say no to that, and I'm going to go to China, and I'm going to marry this girl, and we're going to kind of like restructure my life. And I've always had the entrepreneurial bug, so I was like, I have other ideas. I already had the tea idea for a long time, because I did coffee, right?
I was saying, you did coffee. Yep.
Yeah. So I was always aware of like what people are drinking, and I noticed the tea culture in China was really fascinating. But anyway, I basically said, like, I'm ready to start a business. I'm ready to, like, these are the years of my life that I really need to like grind and focus and kind of maybe not be playing as much. This is when I'm 28. So I'm at that age, Tyler, not even there yet, and he's already like a mastermind entrepreneur. So I was a little late to calming down. But I came up with the tea brand idea because China has tons of tea all around China. But guess what? It's only Chinese tea, and they know nothing about other tea cultures outside of their local region. So it's very much kind of like a better example of like tea in China is like thinking about like how Europeans think of wine, and like they'll like know like wines from like this mountain range, and like they'll get like really serious about it, and you just drink it pure and you don't do anything. Whereas in the West, it's all about like, here, let's add some sugar, let's add some milk, let's add some sparkling bubbles to it, and we'll do the nitro brew, and we'll do herbal blends where we'll mix fruits and we'll mix teas, and that was all really foreign at the time to Chinese. They're like, what are you doing? And but there's a market there for it, because you have all these Western brands, hotels opening up, Starbucks are opening up, Western cafe chains are opening up, and they're there to give the Western experience.
Yeah.
And so there was no good modern tea brand, like Western tea brand in China. All the restaurants and hotels at the time, and storefronts were either be way too traditional and they were just using Chinese teas, or they were importing like Lipton or Twinings, these big multinational brands that don't really have anything specialized or catered for the local market. So that's what I did, is I basically took market share from all the big international brands because I localized everything. I made blends that were specifically interesting to Chinese customers. I made all my packaging like educational, so they understood what they were drinking and not just reading an import label, that's slapped on. Anyway, to speed up this conversation, I ended up making a business plan. I started pitching to a bunch of people, and the real crux of like why I could do this is because I had already built up somewhat of a network from all of the music and traveling I've done. And I'd get invited to nice dinners, and I'd meet the real estate owners that hosted the parties. You get the celebrity context, I was able to pitch to pretty powerful people. And so I got in front of a venture capital firm in Shanghai that eventually invested about 500,000, well, in conjunction with another investor. And from an interesting cultural thing, though, is that I tried really hard, and I traveled all around China pitching, and it was really difficult to raise money. And it all came down to Chinese investors not feeling comfortable investing in a foreigner.
Yeah.
And it's no coincidence that the people that did invest in me in Shanghai happened to be the most westernized, like young Chinese people that spoke perfect English, and they like had studied abroad, and like they were just American as I was, but Asian looking. And they invested in me because they got it. But I had a real hard barrier of not just always being seen as an outsider. Even when I was singing in China, I'd get off the stage with these huge shows, and people would still come up to me like, "Oh, what are you doing in China? Like, are you a foreign exchange student?" And I'm like, "I'm a I'm a musician. Like, you just saw me like come off stage and like sing like it's my profession." And they don't get it. They're like, "You're just this like foreigner, and you must be here to like you must be going back to your country. You somehow just it's not computing for
Yeah.
most people that you are. Why can't I be a performing artist in China? Because they don't have that culture. They don't have it like
Yeah.
it's not a melting pot like the U.S. And
Interesting.
yeah, and so one of the things that I learned though, having raised money and then running staff and a team, is that I had to tone down my enthusiasm, and I had to tone down the level of trust that I had in people.
Boring, Martin.
Boring, right? And now I've had to turn it back up since I've come back to the US. Like you have to dial in and find the right wavelength. Because
Yeah.
in China, because there's so many people, it's hyper competitive. It's like New York City times 10. And so people don't need to be your friend. You don't need to know everybody that you cross shoulders with. And most people, because it's such a face culture, really only care if what you have of value what you can bring. It's a very like pragmatic society.
Yeah.
And if you're super excited to meet the janitor like I was when I was a musician, people judged me as being naive, as being um, immature, and judged me as being low social level. And so I actually had people have to tell me like, you can't go and just randomly like show interest in people. Did they say hi to you? And I was like, no. Like, yeah, so they don't deserve for you to say hi to them. It was really weird. And like I don't necessarily agree with that. But that was the amount of kickback I was getting from my agents, from my wife. Like they really taught me how I can't just be the open, like sunny boy, what they would say, because they see it as childish. And anybody that has real value doesn't do those things. And whether that's true or not, that's not the point. The point is that the culture there has kind of defined that.
Yeah.
You'll see it in Eastern Europe too. Like I remember when I was in Russia, like people were like, "Why are you smiling so much? Like you look like a kid."
Yeah.
You know, and it's like you kind of need to like seriousness. You gotta level up your maturity a little bit.
Yeah.
And same in China is I had to learn how to be a little colder, a little sterner. You know, I had to learn how to like stop saying thank you every time I told my employees to do something, because people would come back to me and like, it makes it look like you're not their boss. Like it makes you look weak. And
Right.
so I learned how to like stop texting like thank you every time, or saying please all the time to my staff. And that was trained into me.
Whoa. Yeah,
Really
that's weird.
very. And by the way, I'm sure there are people that will disagree hard with this, but that was my experience, is that I actually got more respect once I started acting a little colder, once I started acting a little more stoic, once I stopped telling my life story to everybody, and I started holding my cards a little bit closer to my chest. I think it actually made me better at business in China.
Well,
And I think that's
I think it's true for being a leader slash manager in any bigger organization or even small organization, right? You want,
Yeah.
I don't want my leader to be my best buddy. I learned that the hard way earlier on as a manager in America, right?
Yep.
You don't want the person that's signing your time card going out to the bars slamming shots with you all the time.
Mhm.
But hey, I
It's
did
true.
that, brother, and I learned it the hard way, right? Because when you go to an evaluation 2 months later, they're like, "Why am I going to respect this guy? I just saw him puke at a trash can like a month ago."
That's really weird though, because in China, after everything I just said, the one way you bond is then all the guys go out and get drunk together around these big dinner tables, these like lazy Susans,
Right.
kind of like what you'd see in Japan too. So it's a weird culture where everybody's super like closed off and like very like indirect, like really hard to have direct business meetings sometimes. Uh, and then everything opens up once you have the dinner and you have the baijiu comes out, the white wine, the rice wine, and then things start to kind of loosen up a little bit, and that's when everybody gets super like lovey-dovey and like hugs and drinking, and it it
Yeah,
works. It's
Yeah.
how people build those connections.
for sure.
But yeah, it's so for me traveling back between China and the U.S. was been really cool experience, and I have to constantly recalibrate. Like,
For sure.
and in the U.S., I have to learn how to be more open and not come off as like an asshole as much. Tyler's always reminding me like when I'm rude to somebody, and I was like, "Really? That was rude?" And he's like, "Yeah, man. Like, not how you talk to people here." It's like, I'm sorry. Like, I'm still trying to adjust sometimes.
Yeah,
Because I can be a little curt at times, but it's kind of how I had to be for over 8 years in China running that business.
Yeah, no, dude, fascinating, awesome story. My natural follow up, and then Maddie, you can go, is taking really interesting about the cultural stuff. I've heard a lot of, I've known people that have lived in Asia in different places and similar type of feedback, right? It's very different culturally. My brother-in-law actually lived in Japan for 4 or 5 years. He was in the Air Force, and he talks a lot about just the differences. Taking all of that out, you built a business, you raised money. Talk to us about that. Give us a couple points, insights, failures, and successes, either or. I'd love to hear about that and kind of shed some knowledge on our community and people that watch this.
Sure. Um, I think some of the stuff that I might say here is people already know, but in terms of the fundraising, it took a lot of freaking effort, and it's not easy. And I think if people undersell like how hard it is to raise money, they must know something that I don't, because that's like a huge key to everything. And however much money you think you need, you're probably going to need more. So you're going to have to learn how to sell even more. And I think that's half the battle, if not more, of starting a business. So getting that funding is so important, and that's what you should be focused on before you go out and like build some amazing product or build. You focus on sales first, like create your minimum viable product, uh, show proof of concept, and then raise, and don't spend too much time tinkering on the product, because that's the easy part. Like once you have the money, like then you can tinker. But if you don't have the money, like you're not going to be able to do this if you don't get money within 2-3 months down the line. So I think that's
love it.
the most important part is focusing on that fundraise component, and that requires a lot of networking, a lot of pitching, a lot of follow up, and even then you might fail, and and I'm sure a lot of people do, and it's like fuck, I don't know, I barely fucking made it. That's all I could say.
Right.
And I
The
love
other,
that you said, I love just real quick, I love that you said it takes a lot of networking because there's a lot of people who think the network can bypass the work part. And it's like, even if you have an open door, it's still really hard to convince somebody to relinquish hard-earned dollars to give to you on a venture. So I think I'm glad you added that in. It's a
yeah,
shortcut, but it is not a guarantee.
and that open door, man, is like sometimes it's smokes and mirrors. Like you think it's an open door, and you go and it opens up 5 more other doors, and then none of
Well
them turn
said.
into anything. And then it's the one door that like was behind you that you weren't even paying attention to, that's like gives you everything just comes into place.
Right.
And I think that's like I remember for the VC investment I got, it was because I read a news article about how these guys were investing in this incubator, like they were doing an incubator about this stuff. So it wasn't even from all those contexts I just mentioned that I developed. Like none of it came from that. It came from me reading an article and then reaching out to them, total cold call, like email. Anyway,
Wow.
You just made
Uh,
yourself a real nice short there, buddy. You
Yeah.
know, of looking in at the doors you're not even thinking about. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a lot of people need to hear that, because it really goes to what you hear a bajillion times. It's about just putting yourself out there and doing the work, right? Because those
and
doors. Go
and
ahead.
actively following up and knocking on doors for sure.
Yeah.
And then the last point that I wanted to make, that I thought is relevant to growing a business was what? Fuck. I had it all lined up.
It's all good,
Uh,
man. We were talking about raising money. Anything about like you got it?
So I had a business model where I wanted to open up these cafes, these tea cafes, the modern tea experience. It was really, really sexy. And you saw the photos. It was sexy.
Dude, amazing
Um,
design.
It was very
Amazing.
sexy.
But guess what? The whole retail industry, especially in China, and I wouldn't be surprised in a lot of areas, it's all, again, smokes and mirrors. Most of those shops that you see in the high traffic areas don't necessarily make money. Big brands will open up an H&M, a Zara, a Uniqlo, a Nike store or whatever, and they'll pay a lot of money, or they might not pay a lot actually because the landlords want them to be there, so they'll give them huge discounts. The Starbucks will get like the cheapest price per square meter you can imagine because they just need the Starbucks to draw the crowds. And then it's all the smaller businesses that you pay huge amounts of rents, and it's almost untenable sometimes to base your business model off of those kind of stores, because so with those H&Ms, those Zaras, all those big stores, they make all their money in the third, fourth tier cities where rent is half the price. And then they have these flagship stores in the first tier cities in expensive
Yeah.
areas because they need the branding. It's a marketing expense. And
100%.
so you walk around as a consumer thinking, wow, all these businesses must be doing so freaking great. And I don't know, as you start to like pull back like the curtain and you're like, the landlords are doing great. They're making tons of money. But actually to run a profitable retail business in some of these kind of locations is just like untenable. Like the amount of money that I needed to generate to break even just we would have had lines out the door all the time. And even then, really the way you'd make money is that if that gets famous enough, and if you dump enough money into it, then we can open up in some cheaper areas, and we can get some other brand, or we can sell more online, or we can get some B2B business deals. That's what made the money. And so once I made that pivot, so ironically, that closing the stores from COVID was one of the best things we ever did.
Mm.
Because we kind of knew it wasn't making money. We just left them open because it was brand value. It's marketing. But all of the money and the profit that's made was made through online sales, direct to consumer. That's the highest margin. And then the stability, like the revenue streams that keep you like feeling really chill and long lasting are your B2B. That's selling to restaurants, selling to hotels. Margins are lower, but if you get a deal with 300 restaurants, I mean, I'm making 50 grand a month, and I'm not even having to market or sell it. Like the customers are going to drink that amount every month.
Right.
Yeah.
And so my business got a lot better once I dropped all the sexy vibes of like, we got to have our own store, and like, we got to be like next to Starbucks, and we got to like show them, not to say it couldn't work, but that you're talking about massive capital investment.
Yeah.
You need lots of money. And in China, you're going to get hyper competitive market where you're going to need more money than you think, because everybody's what do you call them, like loss leaders?
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's willing to be losing money just to get market share.
Yeah,
And so it's a really
that's wild.
weird mind fuck that most
Yeah.
of those businesses, I bet you, like if you're in the top tier, like Shanghai, Beijing, I doubt most of those businesses make money on a store to store basis. And so really think about your business model when growing. I wish I'd known this sooner. In some ways, it was good that I didn't know right away because you have to sell to the investors, and the investors like the sexiness of the stores.
Right.
Yeah.
But what really makes your money is not necessarily going to be those things. And once we pivoted, we now generate just as much money as we did pre-pandemic, but my profit margin is increased by at least 15% because I don't have as much cost anymore running those brick and mortar stores.
Man.
What
We
a
could have a
great
whole
knowledge drop, dog.
Yes. Yeah. We could do a whole show just on this. I mean, there's so much there. I'm really excited to get to Web3 too, because like you're bringing so much experience, and I'm just really going to be fascinated how you apply these amazing lessons to what you're doing. Because it's really, really cool. And
Thanks,
dude,
guys. Yeah, I
this
don't
is
get a chance
important.
to
These
talk
are
about
like
this stuff very much, so it's kind of fun.
it's awesome. It's like this is stuff. Here's
It's
the
really
thing.
cool.
These are the conversations you hope somebody, if they go to college and they study business, for example, you really hope that like they're learning what you just said was a master class. Like, hey, uh, you think you want to be on Saks Fifth Avenue in New York City and Manhattan. You don't. You know what I mean? Because unless you are H&M or unless you are Nike or Under Armour or Starbucks, it's too much. You'll get swallowed, and or the price you would have to charge for your product is something that would keep people from coming in anyway. And so then
Mhm.
it's like, what do you do? And it's very interesting you say that. I think that's a fantastic way to break that down. Um, man, I had something, Mike, I was going to share, but I wanted to ask, but I can't remember what it was.
I don't know.
Did we lose Tyler?
We lost
He
Tyler.
lost internet. He lost it. He said, internet out. I'm bringing him back now. Bringing him back now.
He's coming back.
Boom. Here we go.
Tyler's coming back, baby.
Yeah, his internet dropped out, so that was not his fault.
No, but
Tyler.
We got you.
that was an awesome episode too. And I know we'll have to have you guys back on, or just do an offline podcast and create content, because we got treasure troves of content here.
Yeah.
I want to get to Tyler. I think we covered a wealth of information there, so thank you so much, Martin. Let me turn Tyler back on. I closed this window while it went off. Tyler.
Apologize there.
Oh, it's all right.
Again, tough act to follow up. Martin just dropped some serious knowledge on us.
Tyler hates
So your, bulleted kind of career part, and then we want to get into Web3, but you actually, have a really interesting career as this kind of digital nomad. We touched on it a little bit. Loved your insight on what you learned about people. Let's kind of pivot that into quick about the experience and what you learned from kind of your quote unquote professional career, whatever that may look like.
For sure. I'll try and keep this at between 5 to 10 minutes so we can get to episode 3.
I love it.
But we basically, I learned a ton, back home in Oz, co-running this company. I learned a lot about managing people. I learned a whole lot about marketing, about getting customers, doing quotes and invoicing people and all sorts of different things. And I think I took that on the road with me. And I was working multiple different jobs everywhere I went, mostly just to meet people and to immerse myself in the different cultures. The best way to do that is to work and to get to know the locals, if you will. And I was sort of trading and investing that whole time. But yeah, I guess I don't really know. I guess the last 7 years of my life have been so sporadic that my career, if you will, I don't even really know that it exists. because I've been doing so much.
Well, so
And
that's a good thing though, right? So, but in the sense of, all right, you've had tons of jobs. You've learned skill sets. You've learned, like Martin, how to interact with people in different geographies. And instead of going through, what we're not looking for is the resume. I did X, Y, and Z. From a business perspective, has you shared what you learned about people? What have you learned from working at all these different places? Are there any tidbits of business knowledge or skill sets that you've learned that has actually helped you be prepared for Web3 or just made you a better person?
the word is relentless. I think that really is a whole encompassing blanket for, I guess, the main thing that I've learned. If you're somebody who is working at a restaurant, I think that you need to be relentless about your service and getting the best tips and becoming the manager and speaking to your boss about seeing if you can take over the social media aspect of the cafe or the restaurant you're working at, and seeing if you can bring in customers and earn a commission, and be relentless about moving forward. And I think that I've learned that everyone's, to a large degree, in the same boat. There's just some people who choose to build a bigger boat, and then there's some people who choose to whinge about the boat they're in. And I use the word relentless because it doesn't matter where you are. I think that matters. So, as I said, if you're in a restaurant, you need to be relentless about doing more and more and more and more to be able to raise your own income. I think that it's the same with a business. I've learned that no matter what it is you want, same as what Martin said, it's going to take 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 times whatever you think it's going to take. And you need to be relentless at achieving it. It's not something that you can try for 2 or 3 days and talk to 15 people and be like, done it, that didn't work. It's one thing where it's like, you've got to, if you think you need to talk to 30 people to raise $50,000, you need to change your attitude, and you need to talk to however many it takes, 15 hours a day. And, it's just about being relentless, I think. And I think that's the main takeaway for me at every level.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think that's a fantastic insight. So with that insight in mind, do you think that attitude throughout that time before you found Web3, I hear an echo that come from?
Yeah, that is new.
Is that me? It's gone now. Through that time and that relentless attitude, can you look back at any doors that you think have opened up because of that, or anything in that journey of learning that attitude has helped you out?
I think that, I feel, speaking of an echo, I feel like we're getting into a bit of an echo now, where I think that it's opened up many doors. I know that, there was one job in particular that I was working at in Canada in a restaurant, when I was probably 19 years old, where I was relentless about being, the best server that could be. And it was one of those things where at the end of the night, there were 10 other servers who were counting their $100, $200 in tips. I was counting my $300 or $400 in tips, and the 10 phone numbers from 10 different families or couples in 10 different countries that were visiting, type thing. So I think it opens up a range of different doors on that side of things. And I think in business as well, it opens up doors for you in the way of the impressions that you leave on people. Even now, when people are relentless towards me in different pursuits of like sales or in their work or in whatever they want, it's like, I automatically want to show them things. I want to introduce them to people. I want to open up doors for them. And I think that happened to me a lot. And I was kind of introduced to that through traveling, but also back home in Oz in this construction company where, one of my goals one year was I said, start of the year, I was like, I'm going to work for Red Bull Australia. And I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do, but that's what I'm going to do. And I just started just going after it relentlessly. And I ended up getting this contract through Red Bull Australia to do their downhill event courses. So I would build all of their downhill, film courses for their professional downhill teams and things like that. And it's like a dream contract. But I got that through starting at the bottom from like local people and just like relentlessly pursuing people until they would just be like, holy shit, like, here, speak to my friend David. And then I'd speak to David and I would be relentless until he'd be like, I'm impressed with how much you want this and how much you are, like, how much drive you have for this. And he'd be like, speak to this person and that person, that person. And it only took, 2 months. And I was at the head of Red Bull Australia and it was just like, it took 2 months. That was all right. But it's one of those things where the amount of enthusiasm and drive that you go after something, that opens more doors than actually asking about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I love it. Maddie, any thoughts here right off the bat?
Yeah, no, I think I actually you clarified the question I had, because I think it's easy for people to hear relentless and think that it's just about working hard, right? But what you described too is that it's not just working hard, it's working smart and working hard. It's combining the two, right? When you said you wanted to be the best server, because I remember same gig, man, waiting tables. I saw the one person who had a 4-table section that would still make the same amount of money as the other person with a 10-table section. And what I learned is okay, so you can work 10 tables, but you can work them as smart as the guy who works 4 tables. I can make more than both of these people. And so I wanted to know what each of them did to do that. And it sounds like that's what you were after. And it's a level of work ethic, but it's also like, wait, learn the skill, learn the trade, know how to do it at the best you can do it, and then also pursue it with just absolute vigor. And you're amazed what happens. And I really like that. I think that's, dude, that's, it's funny. You hear a lot of these like massive successful people, and they all a lot of them boil it down to pretty much that. You know what I mean? I just worked harder than everybody else, and I learned what I needed to do. I got mastery in this area, and I just worked harder than everybody else. And it's amazing how much that separates the pack, for sure. Just a little bit of effort like that can go a long way.
100%. I did a bit under, it was like 6 minutes. I crushed that.
Dude,
You did awesome, man. No, it was
you
fantastic.
killed it. And the one fun question I have to ask this, because you've had so many jobs and you only can pick one. You only can pick one thing that you did. What was your favorite thing that you did throughout that time period, and why?
Including now?
Take Web3 out of it.
I think working for DC in Japan was possibly the best thing that I ever did. I got handed basically a $1 million machine and an entire private mountain. And I had a team of people where basically I had celebrities and professional athletes come from all over the world. They would fly in to basically meet me. I had an entire private mountain of, ridiculous snow and multi-million-dollar machines that I would just take them up around the mountain, and then they would say, okay, we're going to shoot this film for this, this DC video. I want a ramp, built here that is 20 foot high. I want to be able to jump over that tree, and I want to land on the backside of that cliff over there. And then I'd say, no worries, come back tomorrow. And then I would spend the whole day just in my wonderland basically just building these huge jumps and kickers through the backcountry, and then have a film crew come out the next day, and we'd be filming, these professional athletes doing the most ridiculous shit. We had it opened up a lot of doors for me as well with celebrities, where I got to a point where I was meeting more and more and more of these celebrities and professional athletes, where I could then start DMing other celebrities and athletes when they were coming to Japan, and then they would come and, I'd get to spend the day and hang out with them for the day and take them up in the backcountry and skiing and snowboarding and things. So that was definitely the best job I ever had. For almost a year, it was just hanging out in snowcats, my own snowcats and helicopters, and on our own private mountain. So it was with celebrities and athletes.
Dude.
It's definitely the coolest shit I've ever done.
And people that are listening or watch this later, that's what Relentless will get you, baby. Private mountain bobcats and celebrities.
Do you want to know what a funny thing was? I actually, and this is quick, but I got the job through a guy that posted the application, and he posted the application, and there was like 90 something requirements that you needed to have this job. All of them were like 15 years experience here, 17 years experience that, 50 million qualifications, everything. And I emailed him and I said, hey, I don't have any of that. I don't have any of what you're after, but I have everything that you need. And he called me straight away, and he's like, that's the best thing I've ever heard. And he's like, can you come out and meet me? I was like, yep, I'm on my way. And he's like, do you really not have any of that? I was like, none of it. I said, but like, trust me, you don't want to hire anyone else. He's like, all right. And then me and him became really close friends. I was actually on the phone with him the other day. But yeah, that's how I got that job. It was funny.
And dude, that's a version of being relentless, bro. That's absolutely a version of that. That's savage right there, man. That's savage. I love it.
And look how many people probably didn't apply to a certain job because the requirements weren't, what they thought they had. And that's the thing, man. You just got to push the limit. I love it. That's
Dude,
good.
That's freaking awesome. Hell of a good episode too. Anything else, Maddie?
Man.
You had one for Martin?
I did. I remembered my question, and then we got to get to Web3, but this will be a good kind of merge.
And wait, real quick before, are you guys okay on time? Do you have a hard stop, because we still probably need another 15, 20 minutes?
I'm going on.
I have a son that keeps banging on my door, and I told him I'm gonna. So I would like to be a little fast. So
okay.
Maybe,
So how about this? You can drop off relatively soon. If you have some time, you can take us through kind of Alpha Traders and stuff.
Does that work?
Yeah, I'm most happy to.
Yeah, I'm happy to stay on a few more minutes. I'm just letting you know that can't do like.
Yeah, no, I get it.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes sense.
Power of children. Yeah. I'm learning that. Okay, so here's the thing. You were talking about the experience in China, and how there's a stigma around you have to be a certain way or people won't take you seriously. And my question is this: do you think that maybe age, or the proverbial, like, people judge a book by its cover, had a factor in that, right? Do you think that, like, if you were 55, had a little silver hair, maybe in a 3-piece suit with, that you might have been treated differently in that? Or was it because younger people think you're not as experienced? Do you think that was a factor?
Yes, 100%. I think looks matter, and especially in East Asia. But I think really all around the world. I think U.S. probably maybe is if it's a spectrum of how important it is, your appearance, and that includes age, and just like the outside cover of how people perceive you. If you put a spectrum of like extreme, like, yes, it's super important, and then where it's not important, I would say US is on the lower end, but that's still on a spectrum that's maybe much longer, and it's still on the high side.
Still matters.
So,
yeah, no, for sure.
it
I
still
ran
matters.
into that.
100%. I think in China, especially, I don't know how much experience you guys have. Have you traveled to Asia at all?
Have not. I want to, though.
Bucket list.
We got to take you there. there's definitely an emphasis on face. And that's what they mean by face culture. Like, so you'll meet people for the very first time in your life, and they want to talk about your skin color, the how high your nose is. You know, they'll tell you if your friend's better looking than you are. Like it's just really they'll gravitate towards people that are older. If it's for business, they'll have more assumptions that you're more experienced. So like it's a huge factor. And I think that I had to. I think the United States is a little bit of a kind of in a. I don't want it to sound extreme, but like in a more like fantasy world where
Yeah.
we're all kumbaya guys. Like it doesn't matter. But I think in most parts of the world, like those details, like you get judged quickly.
Interesting.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
And,
no,
and
I
the
love it.
reason I asked the question is one, I think it's important for people to hear, right? I mean, your outward appearance matters, but some of the stuff you can't control, right? If you're young, right? But the reason I say that is how do you okay, now moving into Web3, and we do a lot of business through avatars and Discord and Twitter, right? Now you're behind an avatar and you don't get that, right? Because you're not a stately business person in a three-piece suit with shine shoes. How has that changed, and have you noticed that when it comes to Web3?
Yeah, 100%. Like it's no coincidence in my mind that Web3 has been so successful because finally people that maybe didn't fit the appearance or didn't have the right age can now all of a sudden fundraise and achieve success and lead groups because they weren't constricted by that real world avatar. So I think, I mean, I assume that's probably what you're getting at, and I 100% agree. And that's the beauty of if we're still using the term metaverse. I don't know if that's if that's too much of a buzzword, but yeah, totally, 100%. It opened up so many doors, and especially for people that aren't in the United States.
Absolutely.
All of a sudden, you
I-
can be
I
an
1000%
artist in the
agree.
Philippines and like make income. So the Web3 really has democratized how people fundraise, how people create businesses, and I'm a huge fan. It's one of the reasons that we like got into it.
I love it, man.
Perfect. Well said.
All right, so this is what we're gonna
Love it.
do,
That's
Martin.
awesome.
This is gonna be a little different than what we usually do. We actually have one ending question. We're gonna ask you the ending question, and then we're gonna stick with you, Tyler, for another 20 minutes. Go through Alpha Trading Country Club. Tyler, we'll ask you the same question at the end, so you're not allowed to answer it right now. And then we'll let you go, Martin, because you got a family, you got kids. I'm about to have a kid here in a couple months, so I don't even know what I'm about to get myself into.
Congrats, man.
Thanks, man. I'm excited, but also terrified because people tell me to be both.
Yeah, you'll get like, for me, having a kid like gave me such a great sense of purpose. I think you'll like it.
Yeah. Oh, I'm excited. So the question is this, and this is how we usually wind it down, knowing that we'd had episode 3. Feedback for us, thoughts about being on our show compared to all of the podcasts you've done or the things you've experienced in Web3. Love to have your thoughts, man.
Guys, I'm not a podcast celebrity, so I'm just honored to like come on your guys' talk show, and so I'm very humble, and I'm very green to this, and I appreciate all of what you guys are doing. So do not want to criticize anything you guys are doing. This has been a lot of fun. You want me to like think of like some suggestions or?
Oh no, so I just say feedback.
I'm excited for this question.
But
I've got a lot of positives.
but also your experience. How did you think it went? You can follow up with that if you don't have we rarely get like, hey, you guys need to move the title up a little bit more. A lot of just like, how do you
By
think
the
it
way,
went? You know?
By the way, I am the person that will do shit like that. That's what Tyler says. I'm like a bit of a rude guy sometimes. But yeah, I'll say stuff all the time. My one piece of advice before I would go into, not advice, a suggestion. I think it'd be cool if you guys somehow synced your backgrounds, and so it felt like a more like branded podcast where you're gonna get like the same images or same consistent vibe even amongst the contestants, or not contestants, sorry, the guest speakers. So what if you like made like backgrounds, that virtual backgrounds that you made people use when they come on, and then you'd have like this like beautifully like kind of coherent like, this is, the Midlife Crisis podcast.
I see what you're saying. No, that's interesting feedback. I appreciate that, man. But overall, did you enjoy the time? Was it what you expected, or
Stop being an asshole, Martin. Come on.
no?
No, you're good, man.
I think
This
that's
is
great, but
fantastic.
I loved it. I appreciate how you guys squeeze out the details, because the real exciting stuff is going to be in the storytelling of real experiences. The 8-year-old
Yeah.
standing on top of a box.
Yeah.
Those kind of like details are hard to get in a 2-hour window when you're just talking. With the fear of people listening, and so you guys really do a good job of breaking down those barriers and making us vulnerable and bringing out those stories, because that's the good stuff, and that's the stuff that you won't usually hear when you go on a AMA or some kind of call. So I thought that was a lot of fun, and you guys have been awesome.
thanks, man. We really appreciate it. We will let you go. And listen, man, help us out with any of those things when it comes to marketing or things you think we could do different. We're always all ears. We're here to win and grow together. Maddie, I'll let you say some closing comments to Martin. I'll say mine. And then Taylor, we'll get through some Web3 quick, and then we'll call it a night.
Yeah, man. Thank you for taking the time. And again, I know you're busy. You got a lot of things going on. Plus, you got kids are always a factor for sure. Fascinating background, man. Fascinating background. Loved getting a chance to hear about your childhood. Really loved the whole transition into just like what brought you to China in the first place. Just reading that book. One thing that really stood out to me is that, and it's funny because you said, you were kind of behind the game. I think you're way ahead of the game by far in terms of self-awareness, setting boundaries, recognizing your weaknesses, and saying, okay, how do I maneuver within this? I mean, what crazy forward thinking to say, even though I could take this record deal, that's not going to be what's best for me in my future right now. And so I'm going to start this business. I mean, man, I put it to you this way. I'm 41. I really wish I wish I had had a lot of these insights when I was 21, and I didn't. You know what I mean?
It's
And
hard.
I think that's part of life, right? That's part of life. But man, just very forward thinking, and it shows, and it's really really cool. And so I know you've taken these things, and man, like I said, we could do a whole show just on your guys' episode 2. It's been wild hearing, the career experiences you guys have had and the breadth of it. But thank you so much for taking the time.
Yeah, thanks, man. That was really nice. Great, thank you. I had a great time.
Oh, our pleasure. It's been amazing.
And I'll just add, man, I remember talking to you back in the Hate Beast days, and it was an exciting time, and you were building your project, and the fact that you are still open to have a conversation and be willing to come on the podcast. And like you said, you haven't done this type of thing as deep as this. I really want to thank you for being vulnerable and sharing stories, because that is not easy, especially with knowing your background, that you're constantly going between cultures and trying to figure out how different conversations like this go. But you killed it, man. I want to add to friendship is born. Hardcore friendship is born. We're here to win together, grow together. I know we can help each other out in many different ways in the future. And just honored to have you on the show as well, man. So thank you so much, and go take care of your kid, man.
Yo, Tyler, you're gonna have to tell him about ATCC Property Group because I think you guys would be so perfect for this. I'm gonna drop a teaser and then I'll let Tyler explain after I go.
All right.
All
But
right.
we're gonna have we're building clubhouses that we're gonna live in, and we're gonna have like a designated work areas, including podcast room, and we're gonna have villas that are around the clubhouse for everybody in our community to live in. And sorry, I can't speak anymore. Tyler, don't want to take away the thunder there, but I can imagine that we're definitely gonna have moments where we're all hanging out together, doing another one of these interviews, but in person, like in the same room. It's
Hell
gonna be awesome.
yes, it's
Cannot
happening,
wait.
bro. I can't wait.
Yeah. Yeah, we already bought the land in Costa Rica, and we're starting building this year.
Yes, that's what I like to hear.
Yeah.
Well, we'll be in Costa Rica podcasting for sure.
That is
Love it.
not just pie in the sky Twitter like, oh, we'll talk to you. No, like this is real. Like I want you guys there by I would say 18 months from now it should be done. You guys are coming.
I think that's enough
One more
time for
invite.
me to have a kid and let my wife go away for a couple days.
There you go. I love it.
All right, man.
All right.
Thank you so
Awesome,
much.
man.
Go have
Thanks
a
a
good
lot.
night. It was an honor,
All right.
brother.
See you guys.
All right.
All right.
So now we're gonna
And there
have
were
to.
three.
We're gonna have to, and then there was three. I'm gonna have to shift around the windows real quick just because he left.
No, you are good.
But you're good now. You're good now, man. Go for it. So let's do. We usually go kind of deep into your Web3 journey, but let's just talk about Alpha
Talk
Traders. Let's
about
just
it.
go straight there. I love to give kind of highlights on when you minted, what it was like to build a company at that time that you minted, because what I remember is the NFT market was still kind of popping then. So you kind of went through a market that was favorable. But just talk to us about that mint experience and the beginnings of building Alpha
Or-
Traders.
Mikey, before we do that, because again, this could be somebody might be watching this on YouTube and not know who you guys are. Can you just give us a real quick overview? What is Alpha Traders? Why should somebody be interested in Alpha Traders? And just kind of give us that maybe 60-second to 2-minute elevator pitch just to give us an idea of what we're looking at.
For sure. So, and by the way, I changed to my AirPods. Is everything
Yeah, you're
noise
good.
okay?
Yeah,
Oh,
you're
yeah.
good.
So Alpha Traders Country Club, I mean, me and Martin met through full-time trading and investing, and that is essentially what Alpha Traders is. We are a trading and investing community where we basically do live trading 5 days a week through the stock market at open, 5 days a week, and then we also do crypto live trading and education sessions. We've got master classes, we've got alerts to go out, calls. And our main focus is on educating people on how to be self-sufficient. So the worst thing that can happen in trading and investing is for you to be relying on anyone or somebody else, because everything that you do is dependent on that person. So our main mission is to make people completely self-sufficient, and basically harness this group that is behind their computer screens all day and bring people together to give them a community. So that's essentially what Alpha Traders is. We started in January of 2022. Mikey G, the market was going well all the way through till April. And then things started going a little bit sideways in May. We minted May the 10th.
Okay.
Which was 6 hours after the market crashed 30%.
Yeah, I would like that. We had a couple of people that minted. I think it was like the first week in April, OpenSea saw like all-time trading volumes, and then it just fell off a cliff.
Yep. So not only did it fall off a cliff, and we were like, oh, like what are we going to do? But we were like, that's okay, because a lot of our base is people who aren't super involved in NFTs. They're more involved in crypto and the actual trading side of it. So we were like, we'll be still good. But then, as I said, crypto crashed 30% 6 hours before our mint. So things things were fun, but we pushed through. I mean, we minted 725 NFTs. Now, keeping in mind that a solid amount of those NFTs were in our treasury, as well as myself, Martin, and our other co-founder Benito, that we were allocated. So I couldn't tell you exactly how many exactly were minted, but we had about 160 holders. So we were a very small collection in regards to everything else that's out there.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where, you know, it really doesn't matter about how much we minted out or how many people were on board. It's like we're doing what we're doing anyway. So it's one of those things where we've just pushed on, and it's like we were never an NFT project, so to speak. The NFTs were just one of the ways to get into our ecosystem. And, you know, we're incorporated in Nevada since day one. We, you know, how doodles have just come out and they're like, we're not an NFT project, we're a brand, we're a company.
Right.
It's like we came out in January when we started, which was the height of the PFPs, with basically the concept that, you know, we're a company. And everyone was like, what's a company? Well, you mean a community? We're like, no, a company.
Yeah.
So no, things have been good. Things have been hard. We're up to 245 holders now. You know, we've met some unbelievable people along the way. You know, we've got an incredible team. You know, even though we've pretty much flatlined our mint, we've pushed on. We have held an IRL event in Temecula, California, where we hired out some mansions in the wine country.
I'm like 20 minutes from there.
Really?
Yeah, I live in San Diego. Shit.
We had people come up from San Diego. Well, we had 47 people come from multiple different countries.
Dude, that's
So
amazing.
it was it really was. It was incredible, and it was incredible to be doing such a. I mean, it was 3 days. Our IRL event was 3 days in completely private, you know, vineyard. We had a mini golf course on our property. We had swimming pools. We had spas. We had all sorts. We had a black tie event. We did wine tours. We went sunrise hot air ballooning. You know, there was all sorts that we did, and it was incredible to be in a position where you basically flatline mint. You know, nothing goes your way, and then 99 out of 100 projects are like, well, we're rugging, and we're like, well, we're over here and we didn't do anything, but we're a company and we're like pushing forward as a company does, and we're able to like offer, you know, and do more than 99% of companies in the Web3 space have done. And it was really awesome, and it really solidified the community that we've built, which was awesome. So, you know, things have been going well.
So I think you know the kind of questions that are coming here. You hit this incredible rocky road just because of what your subject is and what happened, and then you end up holding an in real life event for 3 days, generating funds. How did you? Well, let's start with what are a couple learning lessons from persevering through that, other than, and it can't be relentless. We know you're relentless as shit, bro. We got that. So more kind of Web3 focused. You know, as if I were an investor or someone to build an NFT project, what are some kind of tips or thoughts that you could share with us?
It's an interesting one. Here's some things that I would do differently, and or if anyone is looking at coming into the Web3 space. I would not start in the Web3 space. The
Interesting.
Web3 space is a very broken business model that should be in my opinion, should be one small arm of a company. I don't think that your foundation should be Web3 if you're a company that's looking to drive revenue, that's looking to drive sales and profit and do all of these things, because there is, and I don't think it will always be this way. I really don't. I think that the onboarding to the masses, quote unquote, is something that's going to remove this, and it needs to be removed for this to become mainstream. But currently, the vibe is that if you hold an NFT, you're entitled to the soul, the blood, the children, and the family of the community that you're involved in. Like, there's no, you should never pay for anything. You should never have to do anything. Like, you bought the NFT, like, you're entitled to everything from now on. And I think it's really good if you mint out millions upon millions of dollars on mints and you create this huge brand. But I mean, those are the anomalies, and there's not many out there that do that. And it's one of those things where once you have that multi-million-dollar brand, you can create revenue streams off it. But if you don't do that, it's almost impossible to build those revenue streams, because the same entitlement from the holders is there, whether you're a small company, whether you're a multi-million-dollar company, wherever it is. So I think that if I was to do it again, it would be to create a web, like a real company first, as in like a real revenue generating company that has real world assets, that has all of a user base, and it has all the foundations running, and then have Web3 as an arm, because it's a really, really difficult market to drive revenue streams from.
Dude,
which is a hot take.
Amazing insight, and brave to say that, because most people just want to say Web3 is the future, and that's just an empty answer. You gave a tangible reason why.
Oh, I was there. Don't worry, I was there.
Nah.
But it wasn't until months later that I was, people were like, why do you keep saying this? Why do you hold this belief so strong? And it's just because it's the way that the space is. It's a fun belief to hold.
No, I love it, man. That was that's gonna make some alpha video clips there too. We're gonna stir up the space a little bit. What do you think? Huh? I like it, Matt. I know you got Matt's gears turning real nice right now.
I mean, here's the thing. It needs to be said, right? I mean, there's a reason. Look, what we see a lot of these major companies making moves in Web3, but they're being very careful, right? And to your point, if Web3 was the complete answer, they would be diving in. And we've seen, and how we know it's moving is we do see that, right? Porsche, Pepsi, Bud Light, like these larger companies launching an NFT, and like we know where it's going to go. But in the meantime, how do you do that? What I really liked was your point about the expectations, right, that people have when they mint an NFT, that suddenly they're entitled to everything. And listen, there's something about being a VIP, right? I mean, big club organizations have this. I already forgot what it's called, but at Disney World, there's some like really exclusive. I am like the ultimate Disney of the Disneys, right? Pay a bunch of money. It's like expensive too to join this. But basically, what's funny about it is after spending all the money, basically like you get to stay at the hotel for free, you get to go to the park for free, but none of that is worth what you paid for this exclusive access. It's really the right to say you really are the biggest Disney fans, right? And interesting that like we see that outside all the time. People forget that like it costs money to buy a skybox at a stadium. You know what I'm saying? You know what I mean? So like they bought the NFT, and what they really got out of it is like good seats, but they still have to go to the game, you know? And
Mhm.
I think that might have to be maybe a shift for people to realize that dollars have to flow or none of this works. And that's true of just all investments, but especially with a younger crowd that may not be as used to that, it's probably important for them to hear, just understand
Mm.
how business works. You know, revenue has to be exchanged, or there's no reason to do any of this. You know, we're really just trading
Yeah,
baseball cards after that. You know what I mean? And so
100%.
that's something that's good to say.
Well, I mean, here's the thing, and this is what garnered us a lot of attention. I mean, it still does to this day. It's becoming less and less, against the grain. But when we entered, as I said, we were in the height of the, hate beast. God, what else was around hate beast? Justin Bieber's collection.
Phantom
Yeah.
Network.
Phantom Network,
Yeah. Like,
antonym.
but
And
everything was PFPs, which is fine. It's great. But we come into the space, and our tagline was that Web3 is essentially just a marketplace for VCs. That's all it is. Basically, every NFT is a startup. They're pitching to try and raise funds, and it's just a marketplace where everyone is a VC. Everyone's a VC. Some have more money and some have less money, but everyone's just looking through all of these startup companies where 99% of them are just dropping off after a couple of months because it's failed. And you're investing your money into these things, hoping for it to get 100x, right? And you're investing into these teams and these founders and these companies and things like that. And, we come into the space chanting this, in January, and got a bunch of attention from people that were like, no, it's not.
yeah,
It's community. It's community, which I get it. But yeah, it's all starting to come around to that now, and I think that there is a few companies that are actually raising funds through this fundraising method, which is NFTs. But I mean, it's an incredible space, and I think that it's evolving incredibly well. And we've been on a steep learning curve this last 12 to 18 months.
yeah. I know. I think you put it beautifully. Looking back now, doing, learning everything. Give me one of your, you think, biggest failures or learning lessons.
I started the company as a consumer.
Explain that to me more.
Now, I came into the NFT space as a consumer, and I came into the NFT space as a consumer and got sucked into into that trap of like, I have the NFT, I should get everything, and got sucked into all of the really short-term mindset problems that a lot of the NFT crowd is sucked into, and then started a company off of that mindset. So what the mistake that's led us pretty deep into, and it didn't take us very long to figure it out, but it led us into a space where we were the founders as well as the consumers. So we as a consumer, we were like, we want everything for free because we bought the NFT. And then as founders, we were like, we have to give everything for free because that's the space.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a deadly trap, because it's a cycle where you push harder and harder and harder, and the harder you push, the more you give, the more that's expected. So the harder you push, and then the more you give, and the more that's expected. The harder you push, the more you give, the more it's expected. And it goes on and on and on until you're so deep in that rabbit hole that you look out at Starbucks and Walmart and John's lawnmower service and the painters and the plumbers, and you're like, how are you guys all doing this? And it got to a point for me, even where I would hire people, or I would hire a service, or I would get food, or I get a coffee and things like that. And someone would be like, coffee for me was a big one where, it was months after a mint where I was so deep in that cycle where I went to a coffee shop and I said, I'll get a latte or whatever it was. And she said, great, that'll be $6. Like, God, you're so quick to ask for money. And then I was like, wow, I'm broken. Like, I'm broken because I'm so deep in that mindset where I'm almost shaming you for asking me for money.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? And I think that,
Interesting.
and I've spoken to so many founders that are that can't get out of that, and they don't know where to go, and they don't know what to do, and then they have to get other jobs to support their project or their company, and then it becomes this thing, and it's why companies rug, because they've got no revenue, they've got nothing, so they push it until they can't push it anymore, until the life's sucked out of them, and then they're like, oh, this isn't sustainable. I've got to quit.
Absolutely.
It's probably not the incredible vision that you guys were hoping.
No.
I'm very bullish on Web3, by the way.
Yes.
But we specifically asked about the mistakes, I guess, and I'm excited about where we're going.
No, man, this is real conversation.
Answer.
This is what we're about, and we talk about this stuff all the time.
Here's the thing. What you described is what any business struggles with, right? What you just said is not unique to Web3. Listen, traditional brick and mortar business. Can I tell you? Here's the thing. The difference is you got to spend $1 million to hopefully make $1,001,001. And nobody thinks of it that way. When you're a consumer, you're like, $6 for a coffee. But when you're on the business owner side, you're like, all right, I got this much in labor. I have to have insurance for workers' comp. Here's what the rules are that I had to apply to all of this because of the fact that I'm serving food in a place. Here's what the cups cost. Here's what the machines cost. Here's what the power cost. And when you subtract all that, like that $6 thing of coffee, suddenly is a lot different, to you in your eyes as the owner versus as the consumer. And that's what you're describing, right? This naturally occurs. And by the way, the truth is people handle that balance poorly in both places, in traditional business and in Web3. I think a lot of us went into Web3 naive, thinking somehow it would be different. And I think what you said is that it's not. And I think that's a fantastic insight, because people really need to know, listen, there are these fundamentals that are there. It's different from each side of the fence, but it's real. And it's also in the same way that a person will bleed their revenue dry trying to pay for employees because they feel bad not paying them. Well, now the business is closed. Now what do? Now they're not making anything. You know what I mean? And so you have to get past some of those hurdles, such as asking for money or raising a price. Hey guys, I know last week the coffee was $6. It's $6.50 this week. That's life, right? And so that's just the way it is. The bottom line is none of us are paying for eggs what our parents paid, for eggs. That's just how the planet works. And I think that's a lesson that everybody needs to hear, but it's not one that a lot of people, especially we have a young community in Web3, have had a chance to experience yet. So
right. Absolutely. I think that I don't want to expand on it other than just narrowing in on one thing that you said, which is it's across the board. We all came into Web3, most of us, naive, thinking and knowing what the real world's like, but coming in and for some weird, fucked up reason, thinking that Web3 was different. Like it was this weird, like esoteric world where money didn't need to be flowed. And that things like it was this weird thing. And I know that almost everyone I've spoken to goes through that. Exactly what you said. We thought it was going to be different, and then over time you realize it's not.
Yeah, 100%. It's we have this conversation many different ways, not as directly. So that's what I really appreciate about, like, dude, these are going to make some great video clips for us to share around the internet because people need to hear this shit. Get fucking ready. But So I think a natural, Maddie, unless you have a question, I'll ask this natural question while we're on this topic. Shift to the mindset of the consumer, right? We talked about you as a consumer, and there are still, whether the we're in a bear market or not, people interested in NFTs and the Web3 and getting into it. What are a couple bullet points of advice from you that have seen multiple bull and bear markets, started your own project? If I am, hey, I'm on Twitter, I'm hearing about these NFTs. What's your advice to that person on what they should do and look out for, steps they should take?
It's a really difficult one, and I get asked this daily from IRL friends, and it's hard to answer because it is so unique to everybody. But my suggestion is know what you want before you go in, and know that you're investing into a team of people over everything. Like 95% you're investing in people, 5% you're investing in something. So, if you're somebody that wants to get a return on your investment monetarily, you need to know and solidify with a game plan that that's exactly what you're going into this project with. So, you might go into some sort of like a Web3 hedge fund type deal. Don't go into there looking for community and looking for utility in the real world and looking for the metaverse and looking for X, Y, and Z. It's like you need to have a 100% game plan of this is exactly what I'm putting in. I'm doing the maths on what I'm getting out. This is exactly what I'm looking for, and do that. If you're looking for a community, go into a community and get into that community. I don't think that NFTs should be bought and sold. I think that NFTs should be bought. I don't necessarily. Personally, I see NFTs as a startup company. So if I want to get involved with, let's say Metabrew Society, I'm not sure if you guys have heard of them, but they're a brewery out of Germany, and every NFT gives you 270 cans of beer delivered to your door in perpetuity, and it's like every year, and it's just off of one NFT. It's like you go into that because that's what you want, and you get that utility. Don't go into there looking for 50 different things, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, it's the mentality of the flipper or not to be a flipper. And the unfortunate reality of the space though is if that money wasn't to be made from flipping, it wouldn't be as exciting as it is to people. It's what I'm trying to say. It's a necessary evil, I think, to continue going forward, because it's just not as exciting, right?
Or that both can exist, right? Both can exist simultaneously, right? I think to your point, certain projects, if they have a very defined scope, make sense to just hold. Other projects are built because they're designed to flip, right? It's like owning an Airbnb versus owning a house you want to live in,
For sure.
You're designing it differently. It's meant for a temporary use. So the amenities are going to change, But to your point, if you're buying a house, knowing that real estate is an investment, right? Doesn't hurt to buy a house that you enjoy living in while you're waiting for that investment to accrue and build, And so it's
For
like,
sure.
don't live in a crappy place because you're hoping it's going to be able to sell it for $100,000 in 20 years more than you bought it for. That's a silly reason to buy a house. Buy a house because you want to live there and let time do what it does to real estate. So yeah, I
Right.
think that's a fair way of saying it.
And it's nuanced too, because right, if you go firm on the, hey, you should be buying NFTs and not flipping them, well, you're taking away over 50% of the equation of why it was even interesting to get into NFT, because you're buying a digital asset that you own to then sell, right? And that has to stay part of it. That's the base of all of the technology for NFT anyways, right? You should be able to sell it and do whatever you want with it. But I get what you're saying. And I think another way to say it is there are projects and NFTs that really shouldn't be flipped because they provided utility and they're trying to attract a very specific community, right?
So it just depends on. Sorry.
No, go
continue.
ahead. That's all I was saying.
I was just going to say it depends on who you are, I guess, and what you want to do. I know some very successful NFT flippers, and some traders. Whereas someone like me, like my opinion, isn't for everybody, and that's fine.
Right.
I don't flip NFTs at all. It's like I only buy NFTs, and I only invest into companies, in places that I want. Like if I'm going to buy into something, there's a reason for it. It's like I'm investing into the team because I might buy, like if I was to buy, say, a DeGods NFT, the only reason that I would buy a DeGods NFT is for the networking. I would buy one and I would go to every single IRL event and I would be relentlessly buying them and working my way up the DeGods chain to get in contact with the people that I wanted to get in contact with. It's like if I wanted to get into, say a mining community, I would be getting in there and I'd be accumulating on maths to see what I can get back in mining rewards. So for me, it's our whole community really, and that's what our brand is. It's like these are just startup companies. Like know why you're getting into them, and if you want to, and the option to sell an NFT is a massive bonus because in Web 2, if you invest into a startup, the option to sell is almost non-existent.
Yeah.
The option to liquidate your NFT, so to speak, your shares is almost non-existent. So the fact that the NFT space, you can invest into a startup and then potentially sell your shares at any point is it's a huge bonus. It's incredible.
Yeah. And I think you said it in your own words, and it makes total and perfect sense. I understood what you're saying 100%.
It probably wasn't very delicate. I apologize.
No, not at all.
Oh, it's good, man. It's good.
I do want to know. I do want to say we have been talking for 2 hours and 41 minutes at this point. So
let's yeah.
I want to get, but I want to end it or close it, kind of wind it down with awesome insight there, man. Really cool just talking about Web3 as a whole. What does the next 12 months look like for you guys? And what are the things that you're thinking about to build your community or just Web3 in general? Your thoughts?
Mm-hmm. I was really excited for the feedback question. I think I was really excited about
we'll get there.
We'll get there.
I'm really pumped to start throwing some compliments.
We'll get there.
The next 12 months is looking huge for us. Our main goal when we started this was the first 12 months was to harness a community, build a reputation, build partnerships, relationships, and build trust. And then our main goal is to build a collection of exclusive properties around the globe built specifically for remote workers and digital nomads. So anybody who is in the world who can pick up a laptop and work from anywhere, founders, CEOs, remote workers, entrepreneurs, traders, investors, anybody, we're building properties for these people. State-of-the-art working facilities, pools, outdoor working areas, podcasting rooms, like one main clubhouse that's super legit, and then have 7 luxury villas around it. So we're already in development with these properties. We've purchased and already started developing in Costa Rica. We're in pre-seed at the moment for this. Our next place is in Austin, Texas, which will be kicking off in May. And then Thailand will be kicking off in June, July. So we'll be doing 3 properties this year, 9 next year, to have a total of 12 properties fully operational within the next 3 years. And then we're looking to have over 100 properties in over 20 countries within 15 years. So it's a pretty ambitious goal. And we're relentlessly going after it. This isn't, as Martin said, it's not a pie in the sky thing. It's not one of those hype things where we're like,
Right.
We're gonna do this. I hate people that talk about what they're going to do. It's like, this is what we're doing. We're doing it anyway. It's like, if you want to get on board, you can. And, things are really pushing forward in a big way. So it's really exciting.
And my only natural follow-up question to that is, obviously secondary sales in an NFT is not funding that. So
No.
is it all business plans and outside investors, or what does the revenue stream look like for you as you continue to build this out?
For sure. So this isn't, funnily enough, this isn't Web3. This isn't connected to Web3 in any way, shape, or form. So this is not an NFT. This is not fractionalized. This is not connected. This is Web2. We're incorporated in Nevada. We've got LLCs in Costa Rica, in America, soon to be in Thailand, in all these different places. This is all private. This is a private funding round. All USD based. But in saying that, the plan is to realign the mistakes that we made at the start. So we're building a company now, we're still building the same company, but we're building real world cash flowing assets and then bringing utility to the Web3 space. So then we can sell collections, NFT collections, as well as our own collection, and give them perks to these properties around the globe and give them utility. We've got different collections already coming on board to bring in their own business models to these properties and to bring in their own value adds and their own, utility to these properties. So we're looking at each property at the moment at a minimum baseline to be generating over 500,000 per year per property. So they're going to be pretty intense cash flowing assets that we can bring some incredible value to the Web3 space through.
I love it, man.
That isn't reliant on secondary sales or things like that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Really cool, dude. And with that, I think that's a great way to just close it out, man. And the last question to you is that one, which is, how do you think your time went? Was it what you expected? Any thoughts on your journey on the Midlife Crisis show?
Yeah. So I've hosted. I run two of my own podcasts for many years, and I've been on a lot of podcasts and streams and things like that. I've never been on anything for more than an hour and a half because nothing's ever held my attention for that long. This is by far the best podcast interview stream that I've ever been on, by far. I think that you guys are, the intensity of how interested you are and how much enthusiasm you show to the people that you're speaking with for such an extended amount of time is something that I haven't experienced before. And your ability to, no matter how long things go for, continue to show that interest is mind-boggling. I'm extraordinarily impressed.
Thanks, man. That
Thanks,
makes
man.
my heart
I like
warm, brother. It just I think you can tell, man, we love this shit, man. It makes us tick. I
Yeah.
think if you ever get a chance to watch our intro trailer at the end, I say, we firmly believe one of, if not a majority of the reason we were put on the earth is to do this. So we love it, man. We love
I believe
it.
that.
And that means the freaking world to us coming from a dude like you, bro.
No, it's I appreciate it. It really is. It's awesome. I mean, it's why Joe Rogan's famous, because you don't feel like you're listening to an interview or something that's intense. You just feel like you're, as you guys said, you're sitting around a campfire and you're having like really intellectual, but also severely casual conversations.
Yeah.
And I just, it's something that I've not been able to obtain myself. And it's something I've been working for 5+ years. And I'm very impressed and also envious of how you guys do it. I'm going to start tuning in, and I've got my notepad here. I've been taking notes. So I love this a lot.
Thanks, man. That did just smiles from ear to ear for both of us, man. And yeah, thank you so much. And Maddie, I'll let you say your comments after that glowing review, and I'll say mine
Yeah,
as
man.
well, and we'll wrap it up, man.
Well, as Mikey said, thank you so much. That's it's really nice to hear. In a space, as you know, if you've done a podcast, it can be tough because it's a grind. Anything's a grind, right? There's a level
Yeah.
of effort. But man, dude, media can be harsh sometimes, I mean, you sit there and you put it out there, and one video gets 17 views, one gets 1,700 views, and you're like, what is going on here? And so it's that consistency. But that's what you said is music to our ears, because our goal getting into this was like, okay, we want to be the Joe Rogan of Web3, and you nailed it. So I appreciate it.
How can we help? How can we help give this a bigger platform? And I know that maybe that's not a question to answer right
Yeah.
now, because it's obviously a deep thought one. But I would like to discuss that.
Yeah.
It's one of those things where I've got a rule of or a template. I call it the one in the 1,000 to 1. You go through 1,000 people, 1,000 products, 1,000 services, 1,000 of anything to find one that's exceptional.
Yeah.
And then when you find that one that's exceptional, you lean in, and you lean in hard.
Yeah.
So tonight for me has been that 1 in 1,000. So it's like, whatever that looks like, I don't know, but expect me to lean in and lean in hard over the coming couple of weeks. I'll be hammering you guys relentlessly with DMs.
I love it,
Love it.
man. I'm
I love
so
it, man.
excited.
That's great.
I'm
Well,
really
here's the thing.
giddy right now.
Mike, Mike's so happy right now. No, I mean, listen, it's cool to have these conversations, man. But to your point, Mikey and I love this for sure, and this has been a pleasure. I mean, we love doing this, but at the end of the day, here's what it is: we're digitally doing on a podcast what you did by going around the world meeting interesting people, right? And you already attested to how fulfilling that was for you, and how it's so nice to go out and meet a stranger, right? Because a lot of the times our dreams are right behind the fears that we put up the wall, and meeting a new person is scary because it's unknown. And there's a risk factor there, and so people tend to just not do it. It's easy to stay in your comfort zone. Got to get outside of that. And so this is something that Mikey and I like to do. We did it in our professional careers all the time. We had to, but this is something we get to do on our terms. And we meet people like you. And what's fascinating about our conversation and this journey we've been on, and what we love about getting episode 1, and this was true for both of you, was that all of these things that made you who you were then, you see now, right? And it's like you're not on a box anymore selling to customers, you know what I mean? But you are making something for yourself. You are going after it, recognizing that you can do anything you want, but it's up to you to do it. And what I think is really neat is you talked about, Mike asked you what was your biggest mistake, right? And you opened up and said, listen, man, we went into Web3, all Web3, like all of us were, right? We were naive. You realized you had to pivot, right? And here's what's wild to me is then when we asked you, what are you doing the next 12 months? You would think this is something we hear all the time, but we asked you what your biggest mistake was. And then we asked you, what do you do in the next 12 months? And your answer is fixing the mistake we learned from doing this process, right? You are building a traditional business. You're not afraid to say that it is not Web3. It's traditional investments. You're going to build this out, right? However, now what you can do is the one thing that none of these hyped projects could do, right? Hey, we're going to come out with a video game. Cool. See you in 5 years, because that's how long it takes to make a AAA video game, at least. At least.
And the rest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, at least. And so it's like, and it's not that anybody's fault. I want to participate in these games, but like you can't rush the process. So what you're doing is saying, let's build the end game utility now. then we can use Web3. And when we say this is going to get you access, you actually have something it gives them access to. And I think it's a very interesting, I never heard anybody, at least on our podcast, I never heard anybody approach it that way. I think it's a breath of fresh air. I think it's something that people need to hear. And not only that, if I was an outside investor, if I was a little bit leery of Web3, but I wanted to dip my toe in it, what you guys are doing is something that would have my attention if I was a lot more comfortable with traditional investments. I'd want to hear what you guys have to say, because then I feel like I can kind of dip my toe in the water with Web3 in instead of such of a risky way like some of these other companies have done. So I think you guys are doing something really, really cool. We want to lean into, Mikey says it, this is the beginning of a friendship, and we win by helping each other. So yeah, man, this is just the beginning. I'm looking forward to going from there.
100%. No, I appreciate it. And the thing is, the other thing I want to reply with what you said is, it's funny because it comes full circle. And if we build out the end product and we fix those mistakes and we fix them on an extreme level where we lean in really hard to the solution, in 18 months' time, when these properties start to become operational, we put ourselves in a position to be able to give tenfold to the community what we can today.
100%.
Which is an interesting full circle moment.
Yeah.
where you can go from, and the only reason you feel like everyone's asking for more is because you don't have any more to give. But when you get this full circle moment, you're like, I can give everything.
Yep.
And that's where things come full circle. And it's and then there's a stream that you can give without hesitation for as long as you want, forever.
Yeah.
And
Dude,
that's what should be strived for.
It's so funny you say that, because adding on to what everything Maddie said, there's two things that really stuck out in my mind. Is one, when you just said hi on the video before we got on the podcast, I was like, this is going to be a brother from another mother. I got his energy. I feel it. You didn't even need to tell me about the whole enthusiasm thing. I was like, this is going to go real well. And I'm not gonna lie, man, like we've had Digimental from, Digimental has become a friend of mine because I was a mod, and we've had Dex from Phantom Network at the height. I mean, we had like almost 1,000 people watching us on Twitch because we had pre-sale spots, right? You guys are top of list when I think of like fun, interesting, great conversations that we've had. So it was just a thrill kind of going through your, just the story of you being 8 years old, standing on a stool, selling in your dad's, and freaking owning a mountain and having celebrities come. I mean, just a really wild ride. And then at the end, your thoughts about Web3 in just a raw and filtered way, which, there's a lot of wag me and good mornings and a lot of superficial stuff in this space that gets me upset.
Which is a big revenue driver.
Yeah.
Big revenue driver.
Huge
I tell you what,
revenue driver.
if I could count the amount of dollars I have for every GM I've sent, I'd be broke.
But what you said there at the end really resonates with Maddie and I know I can speak for him because we truly believe, dude, we started this because we genuinely care about people. We genuinely learning about people. And our end goal is, yes, to make a large sum of money, but our end goal is to give a lot of that money back in the form of our community and the people, Stargirl in chat, God knows how long we've been here, but she's still talking, and she does all of the logistical stuff for us in the background, and is like one of the first people that ever believed in us. And being able to take her to the Costa Rica resort all together and do podcasts, like that's what really drives us. And it's so cool because I got that sense from you guys as why you're really doing what you're doing too. So absolutely friendship born, brother from another mother, man. And we're gonna thank you for the kind words too. I would love to figure out how to continue to win together, man.
I appreciate it. And one of the things I'm looking forward to is the podcasting high. I know that you guys know what I'm talking about, but getting off a good podcast and then the high that you're on for the next hour or two is like nothing else. And I'm looking forward to that already.
Yeah, I'm amped, brother. I'm amped. So, with that being said, people, we are calling it a night. Midlife Crisis is shutting it down on Tuesday night. Fantastic conversation. You will be seeing a lot more of Midlife Crisis and Alpha Trader Country Club making things happen in the Web3 space. We will maybe be back on Tuesday. Not sure. Pay attention to our Twitter. We love you all. Midlife Crisis is out.